It's a Monday morning and it's my pleasure to serve you with the news. My name is Pakwesi Shandoff. To the very first story, President Akakpo has admitted to Ghana's economic crisis, describing it as a historic development. Addressing the nation last night, the president conceded to the country's ballooning debt stock, rising inflation, free fall of the local currency and the depletion of macroeconomic variables. He says the situation is due to many malevolent factors which are currently working together.
Our reality is that our economy is in great difficulty. The budget drawn for the 2022 fiscal year, that is this year, has been thrown out of gear, disrupting our balance of payments and debt sustainability, and further exposing the structural weaknesses of our economy. We are in a crisis. I do not exaggerate when I say so. I cannot find an example in history when so many malevolent forces have come together at the same time. But, as we have shown in other circumstances, we should turn this crisis into an opportunity to resolve not just the short-term urgent problems, but the long-term structural problems that continue to bedevil our economy.
President Akakpo also hinted at possibly securing a deal with the International Monetary Fund by the end of the year. According to him, the country is likely to arrive at an agreement by December to get the crucial bailout it seeks.
I want to report to you, my fellow Ghanaians, that the negotiations to secure a strong IMF program, which will support the implementation of our post-COVID-19 program for economic growth, and additional funding to support the 2023 budget and development program, are at advanced stages and are going well. We're determined to secure these arrangements quickly to bring back confidence and relief to Ghanaians. We're working towards reaching a deal with the IMF by the end of the year. This will give further credence to the measures government is taking to stabilize and grow the economy, as well as shore up our currency.
Scores of commuters continue to slug it out with transport owners following the increment in transport fares by the Ghana Private Road Transport Union. Information available to JoyNews indicates that a man believed to be in his 30s died during a heated exchange between him and a driver's mate over a change of 2 Ghana cedis. This was when the deceased boarded a commercial bus popularly known as Trotro from La Paz towards Bokwasi on Saturday. Eyewitnesses recounted a similar incident to Jesse Sewa Boafo, who visited one of the bus terminals at La Paz.
In the first incident reported by myjoyonline.com, the now deceased male passenger is said to have boarded the vehicle from La Paz heading towards Bokwasi and was told the fare had been increased from 5 Ghana cedis 50 pesos to 7 cedis 70 pesos. After several agitations over the new fare by all passengers, calm was restored. JoyNews sources, however, say the deceased refused to pay the new fare and continued to grumble. This angered the driver, who decided to return the passengers to the La Paz bus terminal. The eyewitnesses said after several exchanges of blows among them, the deceased was punched in the face unawares. He fell and in the process hit his head on the pavement, leading to his death. There's been several incidents of fierce and heated arguments and physical violence recorded at various lorry terminals. At the Nkosu Lorry Park in Abekan, La Paz, one of the drivers there recounted this to JoyNews.
Oh, yesterday we are all around here, and one of our cars is loaded. And one of the first, he showed them the new price, and one of the guys said he won't pay that amount. We said, if you won't pay our amount, it's not our decision. Is everybody know that now they have increased the diesel. So, by all means, once they have increased everything, drivers also will increase their prices. So if driver increase the price and you are not understand, we have executive and the station masters here. You can go to them and ask them. You shouldn't fight. But this guy, or if you don't have car, you can tell maybe driver or one of our executives, oh, I don't have today. This amount today I don't have. So take me go. Next time I'll pay. It's a number. But you are fight. You said you are not understand why we are increasing the price like that. And we said, Master, it's not our this thing. We are in station. So the guy is annoyed, fighting with us. Yeah, and we said no. Everybody should cut down from the car because we don't want any confusion here. We have executive and station masters here. So if you don't understand, you can go to them. We slap her crap, or he slapped somebody, the mate, and the mate also slapped him. I was here. And the guy, the way everybody is right, he said, all the passengers cry said, everybody knows how the thing is going on. So everybody knows that we are increasing the thing. Why you are behaving like that? So as soon as everybody is shorting the guy saw that what he done is not good. So we give another car and the guy ran to the car. After that, we are considering everything. So we just leave them. They understand that you pay that fare and we take them go. So some people understand. Some referee guy there, I don't understand them.
He called for calm among passengers to avert such unfortunate incidents.
They increase the spare part also. So we buy 2 things before the car is moving here and there. So we are begging them. They should see to us. If you don't have, you can talk to us. We are human beings. We can understand you. But you shouldn't fight with the mate or the driver. So we begging everybody. It's not our fault that we increase. We also take a different car. If we close and we are going to our home, it's not everybody who take the car, the same car go home. But we can take somebody's car. We pay the fare. We pay some to some people. So if we increase the thing, everybody is paying some. So you shouldn't fight.
Jesse Sewa Buafo's reports read to you.
Deputy Minister for Water Resources and Sanitation, Amidu Chinia Isahako, is worried that the Sisala enclave has been neglected by successive governments, including the governing New Patriotic Party. Speaking at the 60th anniversary of Canton Senior High School, Mr. Isahako, who is also the Member of Parliament for the area, asked his constituents to fight for what is due them. Rafik Salam reports from Tumu.
As one of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's trust schools in the country, as a teacher training college and named after then ruler of the Sisala state, Wokare Canton II, due to his invaluable contribution to the introduction of education in the area. In 1972, the College of Education was substituted for secondary education following the full implementation of the 1961 Educational Act, Act 87, which made education free and compulsory. Deputy Minister for Water Resources and Sanitation, Amidu Chinia Isaku, who also doubles as the Sisala East Member of Parliament, urged parents to take the education of their wards seriously to model them to become responsible citizens in future. Amidu Chinia Isaku used the opportunity to recall claims by chiefs and people of the Sisala enclave about the neglect of successive governments of roads in the area. Chiefs and people of the Sisala enclave 3 weeks ago lamented to the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Baumia, about the neglect of the area by successive government, including the ruling New Patriotic Party, NPP.
Within the context of Upper West, we are the most deprived in terms of road. We have been denied from regime to regime, and there is a need for us to come together to fight for our rightful place. And so we went to the president to appeal to him to pay particular attention, especially to the Ward Tumu Bolga Main Road.
However, Amidu Chinia Isaku reveals plans are far afoot to fix the much delayed Wahen Tumu Bolga Tanga Road.
A Bolga side of the road to hang, the whole road has been terminated, repackaged, and we have 5 contractors that have been put there, so that you don't have one contractor having a long stretch and being unable to attend to the project. So we have divided into smaller pieces so that these contractors can attend to the project. Now, the issue of funding or payment has also been a major problem. And that was why, together with Tumukuro, went to the president to special appeal to him to see how he can ensure that the road minister of finance pay these contractors. And I am happy that shortly after that meeting, there has been financial monetary allocation to all these 5 contractors on this stretch. Unfortunately, up to now, the Minister of Finance has not been able to pay them. But we are pushing.
Headmaster of Kansek, Duruwe Mohamed Kanton, in his welcome address, paid glowing tribute to the founding fathers of the school and narrow in on the challenges the school is facing.
The school's dining hall has been under construction for over a decade now, and students have to take meals in the uncompleted structure with its attendant consequences. Another daunting challenge is inadequate dormitory accommodation for students, particularly the girls.
Contractors working on a 100-bed trauma-biased hospital at Obuasi in the Ashanti region have assured the job would be completed on schedule. The multi-specialist facility, to be equipped with women and children theatres, will also serve as a district hospital to provide one-stop medical services to the general public. Oyemitia has more in the following report.
Ghanaian contractor Universal Hospitals Group was awarded the contract to construct the 100-bed trauma center to be completed in 3 years. Superstructure works are currently ongoing at the facility, which, when completed, will relieve the pressure on Konfanochi Teaching Hospital's Accident and Emergency Center. The Universal Hospitals Group recently won the Best Medical Systems Consultancy in Africa at the Global Health Pharma Awards 2022 in the United Kingdom. Chief Executive Frederick Amisa tells JoyNews the facility will also come with accommodation facility for health workers.
It's going to be a brand new 100-bed trauma-biased hospital for the Obuasi Municipal Council, and it's a multi-specialist hospital with all the units, functional units that you can envisage for a district hospital. So it's trauma bias, but there's mother and care, there's physiotherapy, there's diagnostics, and of course we are providing theaters, wards, both male, female children, and also accommodation units and a mortuary. So it's going to be a one-stop center for healthcare delivery in Obuasi and his enclave.
President Akufo-Addo recently inspected the project as part of his 4-day working tour of the Ashanti region. It forms part of 32 health projects being undertaken in the Ashanti region by the government.
Our company is the #1 healthcare construction agency company in Africa. That is based on the award we won this year. So we are a one-stop shop for healthcare construction. This is a 3-year project and we've done 35%. So we are basically ahead on schedule and we plan to deliver it within the 3 years.
When completed, the facility will cater for Obuasi and its environs, as well as Central, Western and the Western North regions. From Kumasi, for JoyNews, Oyemitia reporting.
Residents of Taha and adjoining communities are asking government to fix their deplorable roads. They say the roads have claimed a lot of lives through accidents. The residents also say the contractor abandoned the project few months after work started on it. A report by Martina Bugri.
The Taha Road few months ago was riddled with potholes, making it very difficult for commuters to use. This forced drivers to stop using the road after a particular time of the day. Vehicles owners complained of constant breakdown and cost of spare parts. Then the road was graded to aid movement, but this is seen by the residents more as a nuisance because of the dust that emanates anytime vehicles pass. Business owners are the most hit. Maria Yakubu, a chemical seller, said the constant cleaning of the drugs make the drugs look old and expired.
You see the walls, look at the walls. They are all dirty, inside dirty. Even if you paint it, it will still be like that because of the dusty road. So the inside to look at, we just mob it yesterday night, but look at how it is. So it is not only the drugs, but the surroundings.
Another seller, Hamdiatu Abdul Wadud, said the dust keeps contaminating her food.
This bar is my bar. I'm not selling the food. Hey, somebody come and dust. So this area, Pompoman Yidana, all you see in Chang, Mason Tomako.
My husband is a mason, and because the rains has stopped, coupled with high cost of cement, there are no jobs. So he supported me with some capital to prepare rice and sell so that we can feed. But because of the dust, people come around and they don't buy. It's affecting sales seriously. I and my husband are from Boko, and we all know what is happening in Boko.
The Taha Road is one of the most important roads in the Sanergo and Tamale municipality. Vehicles who move to the landfill site and the major gravel pit use that road. Vehicle after vehicle that pass tear dust, making it very difficult for people to breathe. Another resident, Mohammed Awal Dukurgo, said the road serves 6 communities but has been neglected and appeal for it to be fixed.
This road has been given to contract since 2002. And the contractor came and started the bridges to Taha. They didn't even reach up to Balai, not even reach up to Fo, and stop and run away up to now. As I'm speaking now, we don't even know where the contractor is. We don't know what about the route. And as I'm speaking now, you can see, even recently that our MP came out for a bulldozer to pull out the road for us to follow. And as I'm speaking, you can also see the houses, all the houses, you can't even wash your things and dry it. You can't even wash your things and dry it. So we are appealing to the government or the contractor, if he's hearing what I'm saying, he should come out. He should come out immediately and do something about the road for us. Taha people are suffering, Bogoye people are suffering, Balai people are suffering about the road.
For Joy News, Martina Bugri reporting.
The German government is set to invest 20 million euros in the third phase of the TVET voucher project. The government of Ghana is also helping the project with some 2 million euros. This follows the successful implementation of phases 1 and 2. So far, about 18,000 people have been trained under the project. Martina Bugri again.
Ghana TVET voucher project, which started in 2017, has moved from the traditional system of training to competency-based training. Speaking at the maiden graduation ceremony of some of the trainees at the Brook Dream Foundation in Tamale, the project coordinator of the Ghana TVET voucher project, Collins Ama, said the project will soon be scaled to cover the entire country.
And since 2017, we've been able to train over 18,000 people who have benefited from this project. And I'm also happy to say that out of this 18,000, 73% are females. And in this region, the northern region, is the third leading when it comes to the number of beneficiaries. Close to 4,000 have been trained in northern region, which is a very high number. This is the first time through this project we are implementing competency-based training, not the traditional system of teaching TVET, the theory, but the competency-based training. Far since we started this project, the first phase was 10 million euro coming from Germany and 1 million as a counterpart from Ghana government. The second phase was another 10 million euro with a Ghana counterpart fund of 1 million from Ghana government. And we are actually bringing phase 1 and 2 to an end by the close of this year. The good news is that based on the good work as a country that we've done, the stakeholders as stakeholders. The German government, in collaboration with Ghana government, is going to extend this project nationwide.
Founder and Executive Director of the Brookstream Foundation, Ajia Memunatu Kalim, said her foundation started with the aim of training girls for free. She said it got to a point they needed to scale up but could not because of the funding. Therefore, they joined in the TVET voucher project to scale up, to be able to support more girls.
We got to a point that we wanted to add on to what we were doing. Then we heard about the Ghana TVET voucher project. We as a non-profit, it was difficult for us to just, open a school and then tell people to pay fees when we knew that they were, most of them couldn't afford. So we went through the necessary screening and accreditation processes, and we signed on to the project because the project then gives us learners to train for them, who they pay us to train. So then we invested in the facility so that we can have a nice and serene environment where learners could come and perfect their skill. Very important because a lot of people, you realize that it's just that they just don't get the opportunity to have somebody interested in them enough to invest in them, to let them learn a trade. And if you are able to, instead of always giving handouts to somebody, once you acquire a skill, you can be able to earn a living for yourself. You don't have to then depend on somebody.
In all, 95 out of the 100 who enrolled graduated. Some received prizes ranging from sewing machines to hair dryers for excelling in their various fields.
That's all for the news. For more, log on to www.myjoyonline.com. My name is Pakwesi Shandov. The show continues with Benjamin Akakpo. Stay.
Thank you so much for staying with us. 33 minutes after the hour, and we're joined by Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleimana Brahima. He'll be joining me as I dig into the papers. But if you're just, joining us this morning, well, we've already had the news. We've told you about what to expect. Of course, today we're going to be dissecting Mr. President's address yesterday on the state of the economy. Were you impressed? Were you satisfied? Looking at the measures, the reasons we've ended up here in the first place, and the measures to mitigate the situation. Well, you can share your thoughts with us via the live stream. We're also going to be discoursing on some other pertinent matters on the show, and we'll be hosting Kwesiche Dakwa one more time, and he's going to be blunt as always, or maybe just as I am. So look forward to that. But I'd like to say a very good morning to Suleimana Brahima. Sule, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me, Ben. Good morning.
It's been a week and I have missed you. I hope you're well.
Yes, I'm doing well, managing under the circumstances, but we are coping.
So tell me, what has the week been like since I did not interact with you last Monday? I actually took a bit of a leave. What has the week been like for you? I'll share a story with you. About 2 months ago, I interacted with this Kenke seller. I passed by somewhere and I go see her. I saw her with a carton of Jassy fish. So I asked her, how much does it sell for now? And she said, well, it used to sell for around 100 cedis. Now it's selling for 240 cedis. And I said, wow, okay. Just yesterday, I passed by again and I spoke to her and asked, so how much is the carton going for now? And she says it's even less than a carton now, and it's going for around 350 cedis. And she lamented. She went on and said, amani, common amani, in her words, common amani, we can't buy it anymore. So I'd like to find out from you. There are those who say a gallon of oil is 1,200, others who say this and that. What is the picture for you, Suleimana Brahima?
Well, Ben, it's not different. It's quite sometimes surprising when you hear the prices of items that you are familiar with. So I normally on my way home would stop and then get maybe bread or a few things for the house. And bread that I used to buy initially was 8 cedis, then later 12 cedis. Now, as time went on, it got to 15. Then for some reason, I stopped for a while. Then last week when I went there, it was 23 cedis. And I'm like, hey, what's happening?
What, a loaf
And
of bread is 23 Ghana cedis?
yes, and it's not just that. Literally everything that you want to go for, you should just be prepared, or I mean, double the amounts that you knew you used to buy it for. I mean, stuff like even tea roll, fluffy or whatever they call it. You know, they used to sell it by the roadside. You grab it at 10 cedis. Now it is 25 cedis. You know, so prices are just skyrocketing. We're just hoping that maybe there could be measures to tame the rising inflation and all of that. But it appears that we still have a long way to go, which is quite a sad situation.
Tell me, I know you followed Mr. President yesterday as he spoke about our economy. Were you satisfied? Is this what you were looking for? Were you convinced that we could get out of this situation? He talks about the fact that, look, these are global conditions. He re-echoes what his party has said time and again. COVID-19, Russo-Ukrainian war. Then he says there are some people whose actions are, forcing the currency down, who are bad-mouthing the currency. He talks about the fact that c'est comme PDD. L'argent n'aime pas le bruit, as he put it. And then he went on to talk about the fact that they're doing everything to get us an IMF deal by close of year. How convinced were you?
So I listened to the president, and at the end of it, I thought I may have missed something. So fortunately, my Joy Online had put up the full text of his speech. So I decided to read the entire speech, and I realized that actually I didn't miss anything. I actually heard him throughout the speech. And I thought I had missed something because under the circumstances, I didn't expect that the president would basically come and tell us what we already know, and the usual flowery language and promises and all of that. And actually now telling us or letting us know that how quick or how soon they're going to get the IMF deal is a major thing that we should expect. In fact, I think what happened was that the president touched on so many things except the real problems that we face. He did not address the problems that we face. To talk about importation, exportation, I remember when he was opposition leader, he kept referring to our economy as a Goggisberg economy that needed to be addressed. And that is why people voted for you to come into power and put in place measures that would help improve our economy. So you shouldn't have a situation where after almost 6 years in power, you now turn around to tell us why the economy is the way it is. That is why people voted for you. But like I said, the president touched on many things except our problems, the real problems. And I'm surprised that he did not touch on the real problems. And for me, and as many others know, the real problems are, one, what is the president doing to deal with corruption? We've borrowed so much, and there is so little to show for the amount of money that we've borrowed. And this is because there are leakages, people are pilfering, people are stealing, people are looting from the states. His Excellency the President should be aware. He should know about how many of his officials and appointees have put out so many buildings, so many houses, opened up.
Oh, it appears we have a break in that. Suleiman Abrahima sharing his thoughts with us. Please go ahead, Sule.
Yes.
I think that the president should certainly know about all this. So for him to ignore that fundamental problem and not even touch on the issue of corruption, and rather to focus on people needing to pay more, people have to pay more taxes, a GRA is revamping its tax collection measures, that's fine. But when people keep paying and we don't see where the money is going and what the monies are doing for us, you don't expect people to continue to be in that mode of wanting to pay. That's number one. Number two is that the little taxes that are being paid, and there's so much money that has been borrowed, that have actually put us in the ditch now. There's complete mismanagement by Ken Ofori-Atta. That's another significant problem that the president refused to talk about. If we had a good manager, we shouldn't be where we are. We have a situation where the manager of the economy has a company, and anytime we borrow, part of the money goes into that company. The person who took over, our economy, yes, it wasn't doing so well. We say, oh, the economy grew by whatever percent in 2017, 2018, and all of that. That was a time when significant investments had been made in the power sector and so on and so forth. Believe it or not, support it or not, President Mohammed's government had laid down a certain level of infrastructure that any government who was taking over was going to benefit from. It is not MPP that brought this end to doomsday and so on and so forth. That's all propaganda. And we have a situation where the economy has been mismanaged into a ditch. Today, our currency is the worst in the world, not even Sri Lanka that we used to know. The president didn't touch on the mismanagement of the economy by the person he has put, or the persons he has put there to manage the economy. The third problem, which is real, is the size of his government. The president, again, did not touch on that. The number of appointees, the number of ministers, and all of that, the president stayed away from that. The fourth problem is his own ostentatious lifestyle. We don't have the money. What is he doing as president? The size of budget allocation to the presidency. The president didn't talk about all these things. If I were him, yesterday, what people were expecting to hear was, yes, we are in crisis. It's good that now he admits that we are in crisis, because earlier when you say we are in crisis, they say, no, what we have is a challenge. Now he admits that we are in crisis. I don't know how long they were waiting to admit that we were in crisis. But what people were expecting would have been, yes, we are in crisis. We are trying to deal with the situation. Under the circumstance, these measures have been put in place, A, B, C. Right now, we are going to be very, very aggressive on corruption, and during cabinet, I have made it clear to my ministers and appointees that if anything should come, even before we initiate prosecution, certain steps would have been taken for you to even refund whatever that has been looted. So corruption is going to be a major thing. Number two, I have heard people, and I'm going to listen. People are saying that Ken Ofori-Atta must go. People have lost confidence in him. The finance minister doesn't have credibility anymore. People cannot trust the finance minister and whatever he says. Ghanaians, fellow Ghanaians, I've listened to you, I've heard you, and I've decided to make a decision on that. And in the coming week or so, you will hear an announcement on how or who is going to take over from the finance.
But to be fair, isn't there's a bit of a roadmap, because the majority MPs, 85 of them, who said, look, we're going against him. I mean, this was like internal chaos. And Mr. President spoke to them and said, okay, let's have some sort of a deal. Wait till he's done with the IMF program and with the budget for 2023. And then we can, possibly see an ousting of the finance minister. I think that is the buck stops there, doesn't it?
I really don't know what His Excellency the President has in Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta, or knows about Mr. Ofori-Atta, or is aware about how things are being managed, that he is finding it absolutely difficult to replace Mr. Ofori-Atta. I just don't know what the secret is. Look, this is not a private company. We are talking about the nation. And His Excellency Mr. Akufo-Addo, President Akufo-Addo, does not own this country. We are all citizens. we've given him the power to manage this country on behalf of all of us. The people who gave you the power are saying, look, we don't think that this person is doing the right job. This person who promised us that e-levy will do everything. E-levy came and nothing is happening. This person who promised that, look, we are not going to go to IMF. We are not short-sighted people. We are a proud nation. We know how to manage our affairs. In about a month, we went to the IMF. So, Mr. President, do something, even if it is to restore confidence. Is it the case that we have the men? The only person they have who could manage the finance ministry is Mr. Furiata. Is that all we have? I don't want to believe so.
Right.
I don't want to believe that. One would have been expecting him to make a major announcement on that. The other point is, look, the president has absolute power to say, look, I'm cutting budgetary allocation to the presidency by half. And I'm going to halve the number of presidential staffers operating at the presidency. And going forward, there's going to be some alignments and all of that to reduce the number of ministers and appointees.
Those are two major issues. Just to take a bit of pause there. That when under Mahama we had about 300, we complained. Now we have about 1,000. And you're talking about ministers, and it's been said time and again that we can do with about 70, even 65. I think the majority leader himself, Oseche Mensah Bonsu, has said it before in advocating, a Westminster kind of setting. Former President Mahama recently said it, and we have over 100 of them, and none of that. So it's not convincing for you then?
Absolutely not. Okay. I don't think that the president said anything yesterday that is reassuring. Except to appeal to Ghanaians. We know we are in a difficult time. We have done it before. We have always come out of this. We said we know how to build the economy, but we don't know how to save lives or bring back lives. Just rhetoric.
Just rhetoric. Okay, so for you, it was all about words. Just quickly on this, I want us to move into other things. In fact, the Daily Graphic captures that, so I'll just take that as well. But I noted yesterday how he was reaching out to traders. You remember Guta and their action recently. And he says, please let us be measured in the margins we add. We are in this together. But I found it interesting when he said, I hesitate to call them names. That is the traders. I mean, he was sounding more Pacific, and all of a sudden he was talking about, I hesitate to call them names. I mean, why would you even put that into a speech? I don't know who did that, whether he inserted that himself or whether it was written for him, but I felt that was a bit of a gaffe. But especially when it comes to what he says about traders, that they should be hesitant. Don't just add to the margins, because we also know that, look, there are some who are taking advantage of the situation and just adding dubious margins. And he also talks about those who are speaking down the Ghana cedi, so to speak, those who are saying a lot of negative things about the Ghana cedi. We've seen Forex Bureau that have been shut and all of that. What do you make of these two? Very, very quickly, and we shall proceed.
Well, we've always had traders in this country. I don't think that traders were behaving this way when things were stable and when they could predict how things were going to go. I believe that those who may be imposing or adding these margins that are quite extraordinary, perhaps sometimes would do that because the cedi itself has been galloping in a manner that is so unpredictable, and you just can't, because you go and buy something today at 500, the next time you go, it is 800. So if the person who goes to buy the thing at 500 comes to sell it at 700, yes, that's a significant margin. That's 200 additional money, which ordinarily would be something that is just too much, just greed and all of that. But by the time the person finishes selling this at 700, what happens is that they go and it is 800. And what do? They have to top up the 700 to be able to buy the next stock. So yes, sometimes what is added may look so big, but the reality is that if they don't, people think, look, if I don't act this way, I may just be losing my money because I bought a bag of sugar and the next time I go, I wouldn't be able to buy the same item. So what is important is that the government must adopt measures to, first of all, stabilize the cedi Fortunately, I realized that over the last 1 week, things have stabilized a bit. And I would endorse that statement by the Speaker, that potentially is as a result of the actions that happened in Parliament, where people feel, oh, okay, so now, is Oforiatta going to go? If the majority is saying this and the minority is, moving a vote of censure, are we going to have some change? So people then paused. The panic situation in the system came down a bit, and possibly that is why we've seen the CD stabilize over the 1 week period. So what the government has to do is taking the right steps to ensure that things are stabilized, people get confidence in the system. As I said, the finance minister has lost credibility. There is no trust for him. People cannot believe whatever he says. And I don't think that at this stage he should even be the one leading our IMF negotiation. And that is why I don't know, as I said, what the secret is between him and the president. Maybe there is something that we don't know. So unless things stabilize, people will continue to, act unpredictably.
Okay. Suleimana, let's get into the story in the Daily Graphic. It says, restoring confidence in the economy, turn crisis into opportunities. And the government has outlined more measures to increase domestic revenue from about 13% of the value of goods and services produced in the country, that is GDP, to 20%, and also reviewed the standards required for imports to favor essential goods only. The government and the banking sector will also support companies to manufacture goods locally as substitutes for those imported. That was an interesting point that was made, some of the crucial things we use. I've said time and again that it is a no-brainer for me that we import so much rice, so much sugar. Comenda is sitting there, and I don't know what we're doing with it. We import toothpicks, the very basics. And so even look at COVID-19 when it hit, and we now had to think about manufacturing face masks, because China was hoarding, masks at a point in time. It's so, I simply don't get it. But that was one of the things he spoke about. And I don't know how quickly we can ramp it up and create that scenario where we're exporting more and importing very little so that we can shore up our economy. That was one of the major things he spoke about. And these are among a raft of measures to cut expenditure and stabilize prices, including the CD, to restore confidence in the economy and resolve the current economic crisis. He said, quote, "We're in a crisis. I do not exaggerate when I say so. I cannot find an example in history when so many malevolent forces have come together at the same time," he said. And he explained that the budget drawn for the 2022 fiscal year had been thrown out of gear, disrupting the balance of payments and debt sustainability, further exposing the structural weaknesses of our economy. He speaks about import substitution, and he also talks about the cabinet retreat, which ended at the Peduasin Lodge near Ebri, and how for economic growth, the country would present to the International Monetary Fund its program for its support to implement. Well, we've had quite a take on that, so I'll just move on, unless you have something else to say about import substitution and all of that.
Yes, Ben, quick one. I was surprised that the president was making a policy statement with targets of 2028. By 2028, we expect to have this. By 2028, we expect that we would have done this and so on. The reality for me is that people are in crisis and they would want the issues resolved right now. And so what they're looking for are the short-term decisions. I think that really this government has been the most wasteful government, in my adult life since I started, following the political space and governance in this country. Look, by now, the food prices that we are experiencing, if planting for food and jobs, that project that we've put in so much money, if planting for food and jobs was something that had worked, or at least even achieved something, we shouldn't be in the situation that we are in. Yes, we would have been importing the Chinese rice and all of that, but people would have experienced that, look, there's so much food in the system and prices would go down. We've wasted so much money in a policy that is just for propaganda. And the sector minister would want us to believe that so much has been done that today he would want to run on that to become president of the country. It's been one of the most wasteful sectors. And so far, we haven't seen any significant improvement in our agri sector. And I would want to reference a statement made by Dr. Bawumia when I think in 2014 or 2015 thereabout, when he said, yes, there's global crisis. But how come it appears to have escaped Cote d'Ivoire, has escaped Togo, escaped Senegal?
I remember that. He says, how could it jump all of these countries and land only on Ghana? Right.
Why is it that our CD is the worst in the world? How? Not Sierra Leone, not Gambia, not these weaker, relatively smaller countries.
Right.
How come?
So a good question there. Maybe this is a bit of a bright spot. Ghana assumes UN Security Council presidency tomorrow, and Ghana will tomorrow assume the presidency of the United Nations Security Council for a month. As president of the council, Ghana will hold a high-level debate on, quote, threats to international peace and security, and that is on November 10, 2022, to be chaired by President Akufo-Addo. The debate will be on the theme counter-terrorism in Africa, an imperative for peace, security, and development. On the back page of the paper, Dramani, that is Coach Masood Didi Dramani. Player selection from massive scouting and network. Details on the back page of the Daily Graphic. You can catch those. But let's get into the Ghanaian Times. It says, measures to address continuous fall of the cedi. Government injects fresh dollars into economy. That's Mr. President. 9 new rice varieties introduced. Story on page 15. 461 doctors and dentists inducted. 13 grabbed over Galamsey in Doma East. Will restore order in Forex market, Bank of Ghana vows. Before I get into the Bank of Ghana story, Mr. President said, Suleimana, that he would continue with these addresses. We had called for Mr. President to do this a long time ago. It never came. The former president did it, and then, he also finally came through. But I'd like to find out, on the back of this first one, are you expecting for more? Are you looking forward to more from Mr. President on the back of the economy?
Well, we had expected that the president would have done this way earlier because the crisis started not long ago. But whilst we were in crisis, they were just facing some challenges. It's understandable because we know how our system works. For me, it's not about how often he comes to address the nation. It's about what he says. If it's about coming to say, address the nation, basically like the way he did yesterday, a long speech with little substance, I don't think that will restore confidence in the people. People want to see real and tangible actions that are being taken. People have been talking about reshuffle. Reshuffle your ministers. The president says he wouldn't listen. Meanwhile, in 2016, on his campaign, he was urging President Mahama to listen to the people. Look, listen to the people. People are urging you to take action. Listen to the people. They are the ones who voted for you.
Right.
And he's in power and nothing is happening. People are urging him to do this, including parliamentary groups that are saying, look, we have lost confidence in the minister. Let him go. And there's no action.
Let's look at page 26 of the paper. Staying on the economy. Will restore order in Forex market. Bank of Ghana vows. And the Bank of Ghana is taking steps to restore order in the foreign exchange market and ensure the interbank market took full control of the Forex market, Governor Dr. Ernest Addison has said. Quoting him, available data indicates that we started the year at 6 Ghana cedis to the dollar. It got to 7 Ghana cedis, and we stayed at 7 Ghana cedis in June. Then 7.6 in July, 8 cedis in August, 9.6 cedis in September, and now it is 12.5. But we are here again with people sending messages that the dollar cedi rate is 15 Ghana cedis to a dollar. I don't know. The Bank of Ghana seems to have its own bubble, its own cloud. I'm just saying, because the reality is that out there, I have changed money. And it is way above the Bank of Ghana's standard rates. I don't know what your take is, because the governor says clearly this type of movement does not reflect changes in the fundamentals. It is clear that the market is not functioning properly. How do we then get the market functioning properly? We know some Forex Bureau have been shut down. Quick take on that, very quick one.
Well, I think that generally it's been the pattern that the interbank rates are often a bit lower than what you get out there in the Forex bureaus. It's not a new thing. This has been my experience for maybe about a decade now. So if for example, I I had dollars and I would want to get cedis, I wouldn't take that to the bank because you would get a better rate or a higher rate if you go to the forex bureaus. I think that is a normal thing. But I certainly also share in the view that at some point the speculations were just too much. It got to a point where almost every day you would have screenshots, of what the CD is now. Oh, it's 15. Oh, it's 16. And I believe that certainly also added on to the panic. And therefore, any measures that could be taken to stabilize the situation is great for all of us. I don't think that anybody benefits if our CD continues to depreciate the way it has been depreciating. We should all support all measures that are intended to make the CD stable and increase the value of our local currency. And so let's all support whatever the Bank of Ghana is doing and whatever measures the government would want to put in place.
Let's do the daily guide now. Prophet Omoto storms Ghana with mega crusade. We love our crusades, don't we? There's also fellow Ghanaians. We're in crisis. Money doesn't like noise. Ishuru, it will be said in Hausa. Ishuru, keep quiet. Don't make noise. Don't make noise. Money doesn't like that. IMF negotiations going well. Then Blekusu residents appeal to government. Why? The people of Ketu in the Ketu South District of the Volta region have appealed to government to honor its promise of starting the second phase of the coastal protection project to protect them from the onslaught of tidal waves. They were battered by deadly tidal waves last year and are yet to recover from the ramifications of the incident. We all recall that. A quick look at some international stories. South Korea mourns after Halloween crush kills 153, and that's a very sad situation. That narrow path that all of them took, and it led to a stampede. Record $1 billion of liquid meth found hidden inside coconut water cartons, and that's a serious situation there. This was in New South Wales in Australia. There's also Zulu King crowned in historic ceremony. I'm talking about King Misuzulu, the 9th Zulu monarch. But another disaster. Suspension bridge collapses in India, plunging hundreds into river. That's another international story. And Russia halts grain deal after massive attack, they claim. And those are some of the major stories in the Daily Guide newspaper. There's also Ghana shines in Egypt, set powerlifting world record. You can check out details from there. Let's look at the finder. Dr. Mustafa Abdul Hamid is Public Sector CEO of the Year. Free SHS government releases 198.1 million to schools. There's 12 billion Ghana cedis paid and rising for costly Mahama power contracts. And imports regime set to be reviewed. Back again to what Mr. President said. But a quick one. You recall what Pierre Laporte, that statement from the World Bank has revealed about that project and how with a 4-month delay, we've still not been able to account for, progress so far. The former Director General of the GES had cause to, point that as far as he knew of it, nothing had been done about that situation. How odd do you find that situation?
Well, it's a very, very disturbing issue. When it came up first and the GES said, look, as far as we know it, nothing has happened, I was extremely worried. And again, when I said the president did not touch on the problems, these are the problems, where monies come in and the monies are looted. And if the president says he is not aware, then I really don't know whether he has the full brief of what is happening in our country. So it's a very, very disturbing situation, but for me, not too surprising. That is what we found ourselves in. And as I said, this government has been the most wasteful government. If you look at how much we have borrowed, how much has come in, how much resources have been generated locally, and yet we find ourselves in the situation that we are in now. Some of these things they are disturbing, but like I said, they don't surprise me. Sadly, some months now, we still don't have the IMF deal. Again, I'm not surprised about hearing that there are questions around our data and the integrity of our data. If you recall, some time ago, my colleagues at Facture Ghana put out a report that indicated that Ghana was submitting different figures to the IMF and different figures to the people of Ghana through Parliament. The Finance Ministry then issued a statement, and the IMF country representative, was on air to say, well, yes, the data is different, but well, we have agreed to disagree with the government of Ghana on how they are presenting the data. Now you are before the IMF, and so if you do creative accounting, as this government has always sought to do,
right,
where you get into trouble, and then you have to go to the IMF negotiations would expose you, and that's where we are.
Let me give you a few more headlines and we shall wrap the conversation. The Chronicle, yes, there are economic hardships, but don't dare staging a coup. We shall resist it, Citizens Coalition tells the military. Pictured there, Mr. Kofi Bento, member of the coalition, also Professor Techiwa Meno, member of the group. And I think on this score, both the former president, John Dramani Mahama, and the current president are in agreement. We heard the former president re-echo what the president had been saying, that it wasn't the way to go. And I'm really happy about that situation. Tewu ready to work with new Director General of GES. NDC announced results of 4 constituencies. There's also will pass anti-gay bill before 2024 polls. That's according to Bagbin. Then, adopt alcohol regulation. Ghana NCDA urges MPs. There's also police arrest 29 suspects for violent clashes at Ashaiman. And I have not tendered my resignation, Charles Edubuahin, the finance minister at the presidency, says that. But just to wrap, Suleimana, times are hard, Akufo-Addo confesses. That's the Daily Dispatch. There's also Ubeda Samoa in the 1992, 1996, and 2000 elections. And then there's John Mahama urges Ghana Armed Forces to be loyal to the 1992 Constitution, like I just said. In other stories, there's also what to expect from Parliament this week. And then there is a focus on Takrade constituency in the Western region. Let me wrap with this one from the Asante Hene. We're deceiving ourselves with Galamsey fight if politicians behind it aren't arrested. Point blank. Quick thoughts?
Absolutely.
You have a minute,
absolutely.
Mr.
Otunfo is right, and I like the point he makes that we go to the sites and we arrest those young men and young people who have been dirtied by the mud from the pits, and then we say we have arrested people doing galamsey. Those are not the people doing galamsey. If you want to prevent me from building a house, and all you do is to go there and arrest the masons who have contracted to do the work, you arrest them and take them away, but the next day there will be another set of masons and people working at the site. So I like the fact that Otunfo is quite blunt about this. The issue about coup d'etat, why are we talking about coup d'etat? It's because people have lost confidence, and those who are old enough would say, look, the situation that we are in is akin to the kind of situations that used to prompt coup d'etats those days. But we all need to add our voice to the fact that, look, yes, we are in a crisis, we are in difficult situations, but I don't think that there is any military government that will be better than even the worst form of democracy. We have to judge or continue to talk. We have 2 years under President Akufo-Addo. If people feel displeased by the MPP and they want to get rid of the MPP, let them do so via the ballot box. If they think they would want to have another MPP government with a different leader, let that decision be made through the ballot box. I think the military know their role to defend the territorial integrity of this country, and they should be confined to that.
Thank you so much, Suleimana. I just want to re-echo the words of Mr. President when he says, fellow Ghanaians, as the French would say, l'argent n'aime pas le bruit. To wit, money does not like noise. Sika mpedede. Where there is chaos, where there is noise, where there is unrest, you will not find money. Let's find our Ghana city. Mr. Brima, a very good morning to you and have a good day.
Merci beaucoup. Have a good day.
I love the fact that I've triggered some French out of you. On that note, we lean into sports, a lot coming your way, and after that, drive safe, of course. Do stay with us.
morning. Welcome to AM Sports here with me, Muftau Nabila Abdullahi. Former president of the Ghana Football Association, Kwesi Nyantakyi, has tasked the head coach of the Black Stars, Otto Addo, not to let her country down, having got an opportunity to become the second Ghanaian to lead the senior national team to a FIFA World Cup. Otto Addo, who was handed the mandate to lead the Black Stars to the Mundial following Ghana's qualification to the tournament, becomes the second man after Kwesi appeared to lead the Black Stars to a FIFA World Cup. And Kwesi Nyantakyi believes it's an opportunity for him to write his name in history books.
I think Otto Addo is a unique person in the setup of the Football Association because he took part in the 2006 World Cup as a player.
Yes.
Then in the 2014 World Cup, he was there as part of the technical team. And then in 2022, he's going there as a head coach. So he's had the benefit of almost every experience in the team.
Yes.
So I expect him to do well in managing the players. I expect him to do well in instilling discipline in the team. I expect him to be firm and operate according to the standards, the highest standards or best standards in coaching. I expect him to do his very best and ensure that we achieve the best in this World Cup. He should perform beyond the milestones that we have achieved in the past. Because as a person, he has seen it all.
Yes.
As a player, he was part of the team that negotiated bonuses with us. So we should be able to quell any agitations about bonuses from the front of players.
I see.
From the part of the technical team, he was there as a scout. He did a lot of work. His backroom staff, he should be able to motivate them and get them to give of their best.
Yes.
He has seen a lot of coaches. He worked under Kwesi Appiah, he worked under Ratome Dukovic,
yes,
and then he worked under Milovan Rajvac. He should pick the best from all these people, bring all together, and build on that for this World Cup.
The World Cup is starting next month, and Ghana will open its campaign on November 24. The Black Stars will start campaign on November 10 in Abu Dhabi. They'll play a friendly match against Switzerland on 17th November before traveling to Qatar for the tournament on the 18th of November. That is the itinerary of the senior national team. From the Black Stars, let's talk about the Black Meteors. They were in action yesterday at the Baba Yara Sports Stadium in the Africa Under-23 Cup of Nations qualifiers, and Ghana scored 2-0 to win the tie 4-1 on aggregate to qualify to the next round of the competition.
And Prince, what is more frustrated is that, don't forget, in the first leg, the Black Meteors.
And that's an opportunity now. The shot is fired, and definitely this time around, Simba hits the target.
It's a super strike. And this time around, Tessera Francisco, the goalkeeper for the Junior Mambas, knows he was beaten. There was nothing he could do about that shot. Again, it's Augustine Randolph for that pass. And just when he got the ball, he see the goalkeeper.
Colors, you know, he was nurtured by Godwin Atram, and so he knows and believes in his young prodigy. They're coming forward now. It's an opportunity. Simba still handling the ball, and the referee has whistled for a penalty.
Magical moment. Yeah, he gets the ball here. Just look at the skill to go past the defenders here. Very strong with that tackle again. Goes past defenders and brought down in the process.
Has been very agile and active. But here is Daniel Lefrenier Barnier. Quick as a flash. Solid goal. Ghana are 2 goals up.
Yeah. It's a brilliant spot kick. And again, the captain makes it goal number 2. 3 now from both legs. And he's the toast of the fans here at the Baba Yara Sports Stadium. He tucks it beautifully behind goalkeeper Tessera.
The referee has taken a look at his watch, and he believes that we've had enough. Ghana through to the next stage of the qualifiers at the expense of the Mozambicans. 2-1 the first leg ended in Maputo. Yeah. 2 goals to the good is ended here at the Baba Yara.
To the Ghana Premier League, Accra House of Folk won their first game in 9 matches after coming from behind to beat Bibiani Gold Stars 2-1 at the Accra Sports Stadium on the return of the Ghana Premier League following an injunction that was placed on it by Ashanti Gold.
Bars ball in, looking for Prince Owusu. He beats Inkum to it, goes for goal, and that's a glorious finish. Magnificent goal scored by Prince Owusu Kwabna. Brilliant stuff. Hearts nil, Gold Stars 1.
Where did that come from? I tell you what, that is a magnificent finish, but it's from just that hopeful ball from the goalkeeper, and Inkum misjudges the flight of the ball. He as well is way off his line because he anticipates Inkum gets to the ball first. But what Kwabna Owusu realizes that the goalkeeper is off his line, and so he just bends that ball into the back of the net.
Now here is Kosa. Awako, and they get the equalizer. Hatsabok grabbed the equalizer, and it's Isaac Mensah stepping off the bench. 77 minutes. Hearts 1, Gold Stars 1.
Hatsabok have found what they were looking for. Mvo Tanga started the attack, and he also played a huge part. And then look at the overlapping run around Kosa. Kosa plays him through. Striving together, he finally cast the ball back. Waku miscues it, but it falls well for Isaac Mensah. 2 players actually, Hassan could have scored. Isaac Mensah could have scored, and it's Isaac Mensah who threw himself at it.
Here is Glasson Awako, now being junior. Glasson Awako, heavy touch from Awako, but that's a clumsy challenge from Farouk. He says he went for the ball. We have a second look at it. It looked a very wild challenge. I think from hindsight.
I think he threw himself at it, but he probably caught the ball. When you look at the direction of the ball, was that high? I don't think it was. I think it's a very heavy tackle, yes, but I think it was low enough and firm, and he caught the ball away. Awako special. Once the ball left his boots, he just knew he was going to hit somewhere on target. Goalkeeper's reaction was late. The ball isn't bending into the corners. You struggle to see why the goalkeeper doesn't reach it, but it's powerful. And when they are down and when they are tested, it's the captain that steps up, leading by example. Glasson Awako special.
Hello, we're back at Top Tech Transport and Logistics, and you know exactly why. It is time for Drive Safe. Yeah, we all need to drive safe and stay alive. My name is Benjamin Akakpo, and it's a pleasure coming your way once more. But right before we get into today's topic, so you think you know. Well, here's another road sign, and we'd like to find out, do you know what this stands for? Okay, so at the tail end of today's segment, we'll find out what exactly this road sign means. But once more, let me say thank you for joining us, CEO of Top Tech Transport and Logistics, Cecil Gabra. I felt like announcing your name like a ring announcer. Cecil Gabra! It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Very soon I'll stop using the Cecil and I'll prefer Ebo Gabra.
Ebo Gabra. Yes. Why Ebo though?
Tuesday born.
Oh, yes.
That's all.
Yes, yes.
Tuesday, fancy boy.
Yeah, the fancy day inside.
Yes, yes.
Let's get into today's topic. We'll be talking about the causes, factors and causes of road traffic accidents, with a specific focus on buses, especially around this time. But I just want us to take a minute to wrap up on car tires, and I want us to look at, so all these things you said about the car tires, how do we properly service and maintain the car tires so they can last the 6-year span properly? What do we do?
Okay, so tire rotation is very important. If you don't rotate your tires and then you are using, let's say, 4x4, you realize that power is being driven from the rear. So that tires will definitely be bad ties if you don't change them within a period of 1 year. You will realize that they are getting older, and then the front will be newer. The tread limit on the back ties will almost get to the 1.6 millimeter mark, but the front will be higher. So rotate your ties after every 3 months.
After every 3 months?
Yes, after every 3 months, or after every 5,000 kilometers, whichever comes first.
Right.
Okay, if it's 3 months. But somebody will ask, so, I mean, if I'm not using my vehicle, what happens? Yes, if you are ready to use your vehicle, you need to rotate your tires. And remember, if you are traveling for, let's say, more than 3 months, you need to elevate your tires so your tires will not touch the ground.
Right.
Tires must not be at one place forever.
So you're going out of town for a while, you must do all of that.
Yes, at
elevate
least
the car.
Yes, if it's more than 3 months, your tires must be up. It shouldn't be touching the ground.
Okay.
And that saves, it's part of maintenance of the tires. Check for damages, check for cracks. If you see any of them on the sidewalls, then you should know you need to buy 2 new tires. And never fix 2 new tires at the back. Always fix it at the front. And then after a period of 3 months, you bring them at the rear. There are lots more to learn on car tires.
I guess we would never finish that chapter. Maybe some other time we'll get back to that subject. But let's focus on today's core lesson, which has to do with the causes, factors and causes of road traffic accidents, especially around this time. What are some of the things we ought to be looking out for, especially considering our buses, the big ones that, you know, convey a lot of people to and fro?
Thank you so much, Ben. We always hear bus accidents, and honestly, I am not going to discriminate, but I think for those private companies, they need what we call a transport audit. And when I'm talking about a transport audit, we need the team full of engineers to enter the premises of A, B, and C bus terminal, and then inspect the buses and find out whether really they are roadworthy to travel. Forget about the DVLA roadworthiness test, but I'm
Why
talking
should we forget about them?
Yes, but that is just one day. Somebody can do a dress rehearsal, fix new ties, go for the DVLA test, and come back and fix old ties. Okay, sometimes some of them go and borrow ties. They borrow others so that they can pass the what I call the DVLA test. But again, I am saying we need to do a transport audit. Check whether the buses have got the right engine. I'm talking about the engine capacity. Sometimes the engine capacity of those buses are even bigger than the bus itself. Yes, it happens a lot. It happens because of those buses that are bought from outside, those second-hand buses. They have worked on them. Is that the right engine? Is the engine bigger than the vehicle? You need to check it. You need to check the seats, whether they conform with the specifications of the bus. Okay, some seats are angle ironed. When I say angle iron, these are thick iron, steel iron, which are heavier, and it affects the weight of the vehicle. Right, what about the ties? I remember on your station some time ago, I told somebody, if you are traveling around this time, go around the ties and check whether you don't have any worn out ties. Okay, ties must be checked. Do they conform to the dates? And then don't forget, we've spoken about speed limiters. They really need to fix the speed limiters. And these are some of the issues that we are having on the highways that are causing a lot more of accidents. We don't do all these checks, especially for those private companies that run buses. But for STC, which is for the government, I would say a big plus to them. I would say it's safer, and we need to patronize their services than going to such those killer buses.
There's something, as you spoke, that came to mind. You know, nowadays, a lot of the vehicles that we are bringing into town, we switch the what do you call it, the steering. You get it. All of that is in there, and sometimes the electrical work is not done properly. What is your quick take on that? I don't know, but it just came to mind as you spoke about all of these things in our buses. Some of these new vehicles coming through, we are switching the steering from right to left, left to right, and all of that, and it's creating all sorts of problems. Of course, here we have left-hand steering.
Well, thank you, Ben. But then I will say we should go first to the LI. What's the LI saying? The LI says we must not allow such vehicles in. Okay? But what do we see? They come in and I think they pass through the system and they go to workshop, and I ask myself why? Because a lot of things on that vehicle has been calibrated by the manufacturer. And therefore, for instance, if you pick up what we call the master cylinder, that's a brake system. It is on the right and it will be shifted to the left. That whole system is calibrated. And do we have the equipment to calibrate it here? If you talk about the brain box, that's the motherboard of the whole vehicle, that also has got tiny, tiny wires that is fixed to the brain of this vehicle. So that will also be moved from the right to the left. The wires will be moved and then will be tampered with it. We don't have the equipment. Although we have the OBD equipment, that's the onboard diagnosis equipment to check and so on. You will not believe it that those mechanics even cut off the wires and then remove the lights from the dashboard. So when you start it, you will not have the truth of what has happened. So I feel the government should be very, very specific on such vehicles that come. And it all started when we had what we call the anti-day-day buses, that is the double-decker buses, which were right-hand and then were converted to the left-hand in the country. And I'll say that is where I think the law was amended. And I mean, you see Toyota vehicles, Yaris, there's another one. It's being converted. And then instead of the trafficator being on the left, it's on the right. Okay? It's not the best. I wouldn't ask people to go in for such vehicles because the calibration may fail. There you go. They have removed bulbs that will communicate with you as a user to the vehicle and so on. But if those bulbs have removed, how do we communicate? So I think we should look at the laws again and then stop them from being imported into this country.
Well, there you have it from the mouth of the expert. These are the things we should know. Today we've learned about some of the causes, factors and causes of road traffic accidents, especially taking a look at our buses. We've also we started by looking at proper maintenance of our car tires. And we just took a look at this whole bit about switching steerings and entire systems in cars as we keep bringing them into our country. We keep learning and we keep getting to know more about how to protect our own lives and protect the lives of those out there. But right before we wrap, you think you know? Well, this is the answer for today's quiz question. And there you have it. It's a wrap for another segment of Drive Safe with me, Benjamin Akakpo. It's always a pleasure. Hold on, and the next time we'll bring you the next part of the segment.
Our reality is that our economy is in great difficulty. The budget drawn for the 2022 fiscal year, that is this year, has been thrown out of gear, disrupting our balance of payments and debt sustainability, and further exposing the structural weaknesses of our economy. We are in a crisis. do not exaggerate when I say so. I cannot find an example in history when so many malevolent forces have come together at the same time. But, as we have shown in other circumstances, we should turn this crisis into an opportunity to resolve not just the short-term urgent problems, but the long-term structural problems that continue to bedevil our economy. I'm able to report to you, my fellow Ghanaians, that the negotiations to secure a strong IMF program, which will support the implementation of our post-COVID-19 program for economic growth, and additional funding to support the 2023 budget and development program, are at advanced stages and are going well. We're determined to secure these arrangements quickly to bring back confidence and relief to Ghanaians. We're working towards reaching a deal with the IMF by the end of the year. This will give further credence to the measures government is taking to stabilize and grow the economy, as well as shore up our currency.
Welcome on the big stories on the AM show. And of course, as you guessed, we're going to tear apart, slice and dice what Mr. President said, what he got right, what maybe he did not get right, and whether this entire, address gave hope to the nation. Well, we're talking about the economic crisis, and the president has announced some measures to mitigate that self-same situation. We'll be joined by our guests on this self-same matter. Former Minister of Finance, Seth Terkper, joins the conversation. We also have Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, a CDD fellow. We also have Dr. Daniel Appiah, a political governance and public administrations expert with the University of Ghana Business School. All of them join us. Good morning, gentlemen. I know you're in different time zones, but I'm addressing all of you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to you and to your viewers.
Yeah, great. Let's go for the jugular. No wasting time here. Seth, what did you make of Mr. President's address yesterday? What are your key takeaways? Just briefly, what are your key takeaways? And were you convinced that on the back of what he was saying, our economy would soon be on sound footing?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the most positive thing is His Excellency admitting for the first time in the most emphatic manner he could that the economy was in trouble. I stand for correction, but I do not think that as head of state he has been that forthright, with Ghanaians. But having said that, then one was expecting, excuse me, and we do not expect the president to go into every minute detail, but I think he gave us an indication, of how long it will take to get us at the roots. And that for me is the most important thing. 6 years, which seems to also suggest the path to debt sustainability. Remember that there were 2 IMF staff visits to Ghana. One was data gathering, the other was preparation for the negotiations, followed by the first round of negotiations. And then the World Bank president did indicate that it was a mistake not to have done the suspension. The head of Africa, of IMF, was very clear that it was up to Ghana to bring a plan, and one that includes debt, sustainability, a plan towards debt sustainability. Maybe we may be seeing the 6 years as, the context of discussions of the situation in which we are and the period it will take. That is 2 years to the end of the current administration, plus another 4 years. I say this in the context that most programs we have done have been 3 years plus an extension in some cases of only 1 year, that is 4 years. So that would be, my brief take. But I'm afraid the most disappointing is lack of detail in expenditure, and we can come to that. Expenditure is the main reason for many of the problems that we have now.
Thank you for those brief comments. Let me come to you, Dr. Akakpo. So for you, what are your takeaways from the president's address from yesterday? And were you convinced that this will end us, out of the woods?
Well, so I've been one of those who have been advocating that a direct engagement with the public from the president would be a good thing. Since the announcement that we were going to the IMF and the subsequent Q&A document that was released by the Minister of Finance, I felt that there was a bit of a communication gap. And so I strongly was one of the voices that said it would be nice to hear from the president to fill in that gap, to let us know that, how things are going, but more importantly, to also let us know that he feels the pinch points of the citizens. So in that regard, I think I was happy that the announcement came out that the president was going to speak with the nation. In terms of my key takeaways, I think for the first time in a very forceful way, the president did admit that we face economic crisis, and so that was, that was a plus. At least, the first step towards addressing any problem is admitting that there's one, and so it was good to hear the president say, we do face some serious economic crisis. I think it was also good for the president to try and communicate the idea that, quote unquote, we are all in this together. Now, as to what that means in practical terms, the choices that we have to make going forward, he did allude to a number of steps that can be taken to get us out of this, most of which were long term. But I think in situations of crisis, people want more, quote unquote, short-term, immediate relief solutions, that kind of a thing. But the kind of situation that we find ourselves in, I don't even think the government has any fiscal space.
Are you suggesting, pardon the interruption, are you suggesting that the president's address yesterday wasn't true to the times? In other words, it wasn't relevant in this moment?
No, I think it was relevant. It's just that in terms of the preferred solutions, most of it were long-term. And yes, we do have some long-term structural issues that we have to deal with. I think for me, my key takeaway now is I think we just have to wait for the 2023 budget to see precisely the actual actions that will be taken over the next year. The other thing that my other takeaway would be, he talked about the IMF deal hopefully being struck by the end of the year, which was a good clarification point because over the weekend on Newsfile, the Deputy Majority Whip had indicated that the negotiations will be done and would be incorporated into the 2023 budget by November 15th, which made me, sort of ask, is that really what is going to happen? And so again, with the president, with the president saying by the end of the year it will be concluded, I'm assuming that it won't be, as immediate as the next 15 days to be incorporated. But for me now, it's the 2023 budget that I'm waiting for to see more specific actions that will be taken in the immediate term.
Let me come to you, Dr. Appiah. Same, your quick reflections on yesterday's address.
Right. So I was happy that the president addressed the nation. And also on top of the things that I took away to be positive is the admission of the president that we are in crisis, and emphasizing that he does not exaggerate when he says that we are in crisis. I think everyone knows that we are in crisis, but up to this point, the admission that we are in crisis and we will need both short, long, and medium-term measures to address the crisis had not been forthcoming. And so I was very happy to hear the president admitting quite forcefully that we are in crisis. I think the second thing that I found also positive from the address is the admission of the president that going to the IMF for the bailout is only going to help us to address the short-term economic problem, the short-term financial crisis that we find ourselves in, and that we will need medium to long-term measures to address our structural problems. As to whether the solutions that he gave really will address the medium to long-term problems that we face is another thing that I think that we will discuss. I think if, for instance, the president and the IMF are going to wait on the finance minister to deliver a budget, let's say in November, as one of the conditions of the negotiations, then I am afraid, looking at last year, what happened to the budget process when it was thrown out of parliament and reinstated, I am afraid that that may not be achievable. And so, as I said, in terms of even the short, medium, and then long-term solutions to the crisis that we find ourselves in, I am not really certain that the solutions that he gave really, apart from going to the IMF with the negotiations, I don't think that the rest of the solutions really will bite hard enough. Perhaps maybe in terms of the solutions, regulating the financial markets and trying to deal with the black market is one of the quick win areas that they can actually focus on. But I think we will come to the issues about 1D, 1F, free SHS, and then the fact that the solutions will run until 2028. Running to 2028 means that we will need an inclusive hands, we will need all hands on deck. It means that the solutions go beyond the current administration so that we don't have to focus on a more partisan kind of approach to dealing with the problems. So and these are my takeaways from the president's submissions.
Let me go back to Seth Terkper. You have occupied that very hot seat of finance minister. And I think everyone in this country knows that Ken Ofori-Atta is feeling that heat as well. But interestingly, Mr. President, while admitting that we are in a crisis and that he's not exaggerating it, quickly adds, I cannot find an example in history, and I'm quoting him here, when so many malevolent forces have come together at the same time. But as we have shown in other circumstances, we shall turn this crisis into an opportunity to resolve not just the short-term urgent problems, but the long-term structural problems that have bedeviled our economy. Let's focus on those malevolent forces, because obviously he talks about COVID-19, he talks about the Russo-Ukrainian war, and then he talks about those who are talking down the city. Let's take away the talking down of the city for now. Were you surprised that Mr. President went down that road again, talking about COVID-19 and the Russia-Ukraine war?
Yes, I was. In the first place, the fund is not coming from a very ignorant position in dealing with this. In 2019, the IMF did its Article 4, 2019, and that was a turning point for Ghana. In that document, the IMF revised our deficits for 2018 and 2019 to 7.0% and 7.2%. But we kept insisting that our deficit, was for those respective years, I believe 4.5 and 5.3. The fund had moved on. And that is because the fund started adding the bailout costs, which were being added into footnotes in calculating the deficit and in calculating, the debt. That was a major adjustment. Then COVID struck in 2020. Yes, I think one of the dangers we have had, or issues, let me rather say, with this government is belittling past crises. Yes, COVID may have been the severest of crises, but don't forget there was a global financial crisis. We had our own crisis with crude oil supply, from Nigeria. We had the tariff-bearing issues, the accumulation of all the fall in crude oil prices in 2015 when we did a budget with $99 and ended up with $30, and we had to do cuts. But you can also go back to the bushfires, of the Rawlings era, where they quantified, did anybody, maybe now we are able to quantify these things properly and we know the cost. You can go to the droughts that plagued the Kufuor administration, which led to Bui Dam being brought to the books to save, and then in our case, thermal plants. So we have had crises. I think the most important thing is that this administration stopped structural measures, the buffers, like the stabilization fund, the sinking fund, stabilization fund buffer for the budget, sinking fund to help reduce the rate of borrowing so that as we borrow, we pay. We wanted to take the heritage fund, which is savings, not just for future generations, but shoring up the reserves, in a more permanent, fashion. 3 oil fields, we never beefed up any of this. Nearly 200,000 barrels per day compared to 70,000 barrels, which was not even achievable. But let me come to COVID. Yes, we did have serious crises, but no government, and let me emphasize, no government in our history has had $6 billion US dollars, I'm not talking cities, bequeathed to fight one crisis. Let me give you examples. IMF COVID loan, 1 billion. SDR, 1 billion. Bank of Ghana, 1.7 billion. Our own stabilization fund, initial 250 million, As we speak, it has reached, almost 400 or surpassed 400, million. World Bank, almost, 1 billion. If you add African Development Bank, that is 1 billion. You add this up, and we are talking about something close to 6 billion, if not over 6 billion, to tackle the crisis. Did we miss an opportunity to use all these flows to do a significant correction, especially when the COVID report, of March 2020, and it's there for anybody to go and check. There's a table there, which was repeated from 2019, showed that we were sitting on a fiscal gap of 3 to 6%, right? It's there. It started from the Article 4, and some things are not new. Part of the solution for those were gold monetization. That's a Japan. Levies, which is e-levy. After we are done, they are there. Maybe the economists can start looking at this so that we have a better understanding. So the other major disappointment is to continue saying that everything was rosy up to 2019. No, they were not. Because these two reports show a fiscal gap which the government needs to fill. And we got the 6 billion. Remember, 6 billion plus 3 billion before we couldn't go to the market, of bonds up to 2020. So that's about 8 billion. And we couldn't use it to do a correction. So that's the extent to which I'm surprised, to, come to the situation, that, what is facing us is unprecedented. Yes, there is a feature of uncertainty and a feature of, the situation being unusual, and one isn't running away from that. But just imagine the significant flows. No government had gotten more than 1 billion US dollars to do a correction. All the 17 IMF programs that we did. The one that came closest, 915 million, was the John Mahama, Honorable Mahama, His Excellency Mahama's, UCF, which the current government took over and got about 1/3 of that IMF money actually flowing into the economy, in addition to the crude oil prices, the buffers which I mentioned into 2017, which was a source of growth. If you doubt, you can see the source of growth was mainly oil. Non-oil growth has always been flat. We missed opportunity to use these massive resources, our own internal resources like oil, and the largesse from the World Bank, IMF, and the rest of 6 billion, plus our own borrowing of bonds. What else do you need, to do a correction? So this is what is missing. And I would hope that, we would start facing these realities. What is taking up, just to conclude, what is taking up all of this? It is the expenditure. We started borrowing heavily to support free SHS. And mind you, last year, Bank of Ghana...
But free SHS doesn't take that much money. I mean, looking at what it has swallowed or consumed over the years, it's just a drop in a bucket compared to our other expenditures. So when you say we've been borrowing to finance free SHS, how exactly do you mean?
Well, if all these funds that came in, remember SDR, it's not a loan. You remember our own borrowing and the rest. And I'm saying that, and that's the point I was coming to, are not enough to support the government's own budget to the point where, as we speak, apart from the 10 billion Bank of Ghana gave in 2020, Bank of Ghana has financed 22 by mid-year, in the mid-year review, 22 billion Ghana cedis of the 37 billion deficit that the government, that's 2/3 of the deficit. It's on the shoulders of Bank of Ghana. So yes, we may blame, speculators and the rest, but the resources, and remember what was Bank of Ghana financing? It includes debt service because the revenue coming in was enough to pay on the compensation and interest. And so the forest component that, is included in that financing, and that was depleting, the reserves because the budget was not bringing in money to meet those commitments. And that is 2/3, right? So we'll see the percentage that Bank of Ghana financed. And remember, this is a country which by 2016 had done zero financing, not taking a penny from Bank of Ghana to finance the deficits. That's how we ended 2016. And it's there, the records are there. So we do have significant problems, and we can only, make a headway.
Okay.
If we talk about expenditure as well.
All right. Let me bring in Dr. Appiah. From where you sit, I've been quoting Mr. President. He says, we are determined to restore stability to the economy and provide relief. We are all in this together. And I'm asking for your support to rescue Ghana from the throes of this economic crisis. He then re-echoes the fact that his administration does not know how to bring back the dead, but they know how to restore the economy, to rejig the economy, bring it back to life. But looking at the measures we've put in place, looking at what Mr. President said, hinted at, will that suffice to do what he says will happen, aka restore our economy?
Right, thank you. We are in this together, and clearly, if you look at some of the measures that he proposed to deal with it, for instance, that there will be a new property rate regime. And so a new property rate regime is certainly going to affect property owners, and property owners are expected to contribute to solving the crisis. Also, he talked about the fact that the GRA, that's the Ghana Revenue Authority, is going to improve revenue mobilization. Once again, the ordinary Ghanaian is expected to help contribute to the solutions by paying taxes. And then he talked about also the fact that the ministries, departments, and agencies should be ready for 30% cut on discretionary expenditures. And so businesses are going to be affected. The ordinary person is going to pay more taxes. Ministries, departments, and agencies are also going to suffer. Now, this certainly shows that we are all in this together. But on the other side, what is the presidency offering to solve the problem? He talked about the continuing cut in the 30% of the salaries of ministers, the president, the vice president. And if the 30% cut in the salaries of ministers and then the president, vice president is something that will help to deal with the problem, I think it will have helped long ago, because this is not something new. And so I think that the solutions that he talked about, much of the effects that he kept emphasizing is going to be on the ordinary Ghanaian property owners, businesses, ministries, departments, and agencies. But I don't think that he did enough in terms of what the government is offering to deal with the problem. For instance, before the crisis, we all knew that the free SHS program was a major contributory factor to the crisis that we all face. And up to date, many schools are having problems with feeding, school feeding, and all that. And so one would have expected that the president, having mentioned free education twice in the address, would have said something about what he was going to do about the free SHS program to help deal with the financial crisis that we find ourselves in. He talked about also the using 1D, 1F program to make up for import substitution of products like toothpicks and then all that. But hey, IMF money is not for industrialization. IMF money is not for 1D, 1F program. So where is he going to get the money for this import substitution kind of measures that
is that to say that point he made was not realistic in economic terms?
It's not realistic in economic terms at the end of the day, because from the COVID-19 that we went through and the support that was given to the 1D, 1F program, one expects that the president will have gone to the detail of telling us exactly how the support given to the 1D, 1F program, the import substitution measures that they embarked upon has actually helped to contribute to improving the economy. And if those were very serious and credible measures to improve the economy, we would not have been in this kind of crisis. And then if we also look at the solution in terms of the finance minister going to prepare and then present a budget, in preparation for or towards this IMF kind of negotiations, you ask yourself whether the finance minister has got the credibility and then the influence to get the support of parliament to accept the budget. And I do not see that happening in the short term. The president talked about the fact that he wants a quick solution to this kind of problem, but he's heading towards another storm in parliament, and it's more likely to take a longer time for both sides of the house to agree on the budget. If it's likely to take a longer time, then is it realistic for him to say that he wants a short deal with this IMF program, and it's likely that we will finish this IMF negotiations in December? I do not foresee that happening. And so I think that it is better that he also listens carefully to the numerous calls, at least to restructure and reshuffle his government, at least to bring some credibility to the negotiation table. And I didn't hear him touch on that aspect. So I think much of the measures is more focusing on the Ghanaian expecting to go through a tougher and a harsher economic environment. Right. But the president, I think, offers better in terms of what the government is actually offering to deal with the problem.
Staying on that trajectory of we're all in this together, Mr. President also says, I hear from the market queens also that another factor fueling the high prices is the high margins that some traders are slapping on goods for fear of future high costs. He goes on to tell them that we're all in this together. Let us be measured in the margins we add. And he even goes to the extent of saying that he is refraining himself from calling them any names. But in this regard, and what he calls for, I don't know how realistic may be price regulation. Remember the days of Kalabule and price regulation. Can we do that? Can we implement a regime of price regulation in these times? Because some people have also said that, look, those who are producing local rice, for example, what substantiates their slapping high costs on their rice? But then there are also the realities of a lot of imported goods. So where do we draw the line?
In terms of the measure in terms of price regulation, market regulation, it's also raised my doubt as to whether this democratic laissez-faire regime is capable of dealing with that. Of course, the only side that I think that the government can deal with is clamping down the black markets and then tightening financial regulation to prevent capital flight. He mentioned the fact that, of course, when it comes to our oil and gas revenue, now you have to go through a local kind of account. That one, I think, is within their purview. But price regulation, that sounds more militaristic. I mean, I do not really think that at the end of the day, the government has got, when I talk about the government, this system of government that we practice is capable of regulating prices on the market. And so that's why he appealed to the market women to try and then not to hike up prices. So on the one hand, he's talking about price regulation, but on the other hand, appealing to the market women. And so it's more of an appeal to market women than the government being really capable of regulating prices on the market. And so much should come from rather the government side in terms of maybe cutting down the number of ministers, cutting down expenditure to deal with the problem.
So, Mr. President, and I'll address this to Dr. Kwapong. Mr. President also says, look, it is clear that you have a government that cares. First of all, did you get an impression from all that was said? Because people have said that they expected more from Mr. President. For example, cutting down, trimming down ministers and taking other radical measures, which they did not see. Did you get that impression that government really cares and wants to get us out of this abyss, so to speak? And secondly, talking about pensions and the fact that, even if there will be no haircut in the first place and all of these sums of money, deposits will not be affected. How comforting was that for you, looking at the sector and what we've been told in the past that we should expect a crude haircut?
I think it was very important on the question of the haircut to send that signal, because I think prior to that, there had been a lot of conversations in the public and concerns, questions about what was going to happen to those who had made investments in government bonds, securities, treasury bills, things like that, right? And so out of those concerns, then you cannot see the kind of action that it could possibly drive people into. Do I take out my investment? Do I keep it? Am I okay? Am I not safe? And that doesn't create a very also stable investment environment. So I think it was very, very important that the president forcefully came out and said, there will be no such thing, right? So hopefully that would be reassuring to individuals with investments, other institutions, pension houses that have investments in these instruments. Hopefully that will be very reassuring to them. At the end of the day, though, beyond the reassurance, people also do read the signs. And when I say people do read the signs, they take a look at various reports that come out, whether it's reports from the central bank, whether it's all the data points that may come from, let's say, inflation reports from statistical services, things that the Ministry of Finance may put out. So beyond those words of reassurance, there are also the realities that come through the economic indices and other indicators that people also do pick up, putting it all together to then make that decision that, okay, I think we are safe, I'm on solid ground, I have nothing to worry about. Or they could also say, thanks for the reassurance, but the numbers still don't give me confidence. So, but again, ultimately, it's a good thing that the president forcefully said, do not worry. Hopefully that will be backed by whatever numbers to come out, the state of the economy as we go ahead. So that for me was very important to do. And your previous question again.
So I asked about. I think you've addressed that question in the first place. So I was asking about the pensions as well and how they would be affected. And then I segued that into the haircut bit.
Okay. Right. Because again, I mean, if you think about, all of these investments, if people are supposed to take a haircut on such investments, the implications for the institutions, the implications for pension houses, the implications for individuals who invested in some of these instruments as a way to save, as a way to secure their future. So for me, again, hopefully it would those words of assurance would calm people down and not sort of the panic would go down. Let me put it that way.
Just a follow-up question, and I'll put that question to Seth Tekwe as well. He also painted the picture that, look, inflation is hitting all of us across the world. So don't fail to appreciate what you have in Ghana. And here's the picture. He says, look, the highest rise in government borrowing in 50 years is what we're experiencing. The highest rise in inflation for 40 years. He adds that between the end of 2019 and now, inflation in Ghana has increased 5-fold. In Togo, by 16-fold. And in the Ivory Coast by 7-fold, saying that don't fail to appreciate what you have. Just last week, I was in Togo, and trust me, buying there, I don't think I felt the pinch the way I feel it in Ghana. But that is just me. Maybe I'm not feeling the 16-fold as much as I am feeling the 5-fold in Ghana. But take a look at this. When you look at the annual inflation, Turkey now stands at 83.4%, Argentina 83%, the Netherlands 14.5%, Russia 13.7%, and this is Russia that is at war. Italy 11.9%, India, South Africa 7.5%. If you look at our West African neighbors, none of them seems to have an inflation as high as ours. So is there something we're missing that the president and his economic team are seeing, something we are failing to see?
And you see, at the end of the day, as they always say, all politics is local. So the art of comparison is great. Putting things in a comparative perspective is also, has its place in moments of crisis, right? To say that, look, what you're going through is not unique to Ghana, right? That other places are facing challenges as well. I live and work in the US. We are facing our own challenges. But I remember raising the challenges that we are facing in the US and saying, this is Joe Biden's economy. And a friend of mine saying, well, the whole world is in crisis. And I remember my response to him was, I understand, but this is where I earn a living. This is where I buy food. This is where I buy petrol. This is where I pay my taxes. It is in the same vein that whilst you can appreciate that comparative analysis that says others are facing crisis as well, and it's a global phenomenon, at the end of the day, I think the Ghanaian can only speak of their Ghanaian experience and where they feel the pinch points.
Right.
And that's where, for me, I think the more of the emphasis of the speech should have been, which is the local pinch points that are being felt and the specific actions that will be taken to address those local pinch points, even as we acknowledge that there is a global crisis going on. Because at the end of the day, we go to the market in Accra, Medina, Kumasi, wherever. So it is those local pinch points that people are complaining about, and they de-emphasize that comparative aspect of what is happening in other countries.
And to come to you, Seth, on that, I want you to be brief because I have a follow-up for you. But just to contextualize it, those pinpoints that Dr. Kwapon speaks of, even when you look at our kitty, while some will say that even the way we measure our inflation is problematic, the likes of Professor Steve Hang, look at some of the things we consume a lot. Rice. I go on the market and I sometimes just ask, if you look at the percentage increases for some of these products, it's over 200%. You look at chicken, you look at oil, which has moved from around 500 and something cedis to 1,200 cedis per gallon. You look at all of these and you realize that it's not so simple to just say that our inflation is here when you focus on certain items in the basket. But your quick reaction to that, Mr. Tekpe.
Well, thank you very much. And I think His Excellency mentioned this, period we are in comparison with 30, 40 years ago. In Ghana, when we talk about 30, 40 years ago, we are talking about pre-ERP SAP era. That is what we must, understand. Next year is the 40th anniversary of the launch of the Economic Recovery Program and Structural Adjustment Program. And you would agree with me that we have had our ups and downs, including 17 IMF programs. But never have any of those situations brought us to this point. And when we are making these comparisons, I recall fondly being when we were reminded that, when our debt was rising, that even the UK, had debt of 100% and whatever we could, then we cautioned that you are no UK. They have the pound sterling, the others have the euro, others have the dollar, you have the cedi, and you must play, according to your size. So it's worth remembering that before this point, our debt had crossed 80%. Before this point, our deficit was anything between 13 to 15%. And so if you are doing comparisons, with even neighbors, you may want to go back 2-3 years and see where they were compared to the current situation. Yes, nobody is denying that the current situation, is it's not a major factor. Yes, it is, but I'm saying that the habit of, blaming everything, on what is going on around us without we delving into our difficulties and problems,
right?
And admitting. But a quick one, if I may, just a quick one. Property taxes. I think we have to be careful. Property taxes have been the mainstay of local government, from the colonial era. And you are saying that you are therefore going to take a major source of revenue for our MMDAs, and bring it, to the national level, maybe share it with them at a time when you've already capped since 2017 the DACF, and they have been deprived, they owe arrears. So we should be careful that in preferring one solution, we are not creating,
right,
other solutions, because those assemblies, I can tell you, and I've been an assembly member, nominated, not, appointed, and I know the situation, on the ground pages and the work that those monies do, for them. So I think we should be careful with some of the solutions that are being proposed, just like the e-levy, which after all is just one of 13, levies, that are on our books today and are distorting our ability, to have a less distortionary tax regime and a simple one that will enable GRA administer the taxes more efficiently.
Right. I want to come in with my follow-up very quickly. Mr. President says that his government is working to secure reliable and regular sources of affordable petroleum products for the Ghanaian market. Of course, for me, in my entire living years in Ghana, I have never seen prices this high. Diesel is almost, it's practically just the peswa away from 20 cedis, and petrol, fuel save is somewhere around 18 cedis, 17 cedis in some places. It depends on where you're going. But let's set that aside briefly. Let's talk about the exchange rate. I want us to take a critical look at that. I have a quote here from the Vice President in 2012, where he says, "The government is blaming speculators for the fall in the cedi instead of tackling its depreciation." So speculation. Now, fast forward today, or yesterday to be precise, we had Mr. President say, "Fellow Ghanaians, as the French would say, l'argent n'aime pas le bruit." To wit, money does not like noise. Sika impedidi. Where there is chaos, where there is noise, where there is unrest, you will not find money. How apt was this statement of Mr. President? Briefly on that.
Well, the chickens have come home to roost. That's all I can say. Because yes, it was easy to be making those statements. But as my President Mahama said, if you have not been in the seat, maybe you. So the reality is now setting in, and I would hope that the consensus that is required, because the situation we are in now, we all know, is far worse, than those, that were described back, in 2012. And remember in 2012, I remember very well that, my immediate boss, Dr. Dufo, said something similar, that money doesn't like noise. It was a big, graphic headline, So yes, this is a standing truth. And I think in terms of speculators and the rest, again, we can go back into ERP SAP. We can go back into, if some of those measures, like price controls and the rest, were sustainable, I don't think we would have the current, market-based policies that we have, because they were tried. And what we have is a compromise. There are some controls through utility price controls, subsidy, and the rest. But the truth is that, let me give you one example. The vehicle that was put in ESLA for subsidy has been collateralized as part of the collateralization of ESLA. And so we don't have, that money to provide, the subsidy. It's pure and simple. The strategic stock experiment that we started, like the U.S., Doc was talking about U.S. measures and the rest, and the thing about U.S. is they have their buffers. Yes, they may have their problems. We started those buffers. I mentioned Sinking Fund, Stabilization Fund, and all those. Those are the structural things that you need. Yes, then it gets to a point like this one where you can implement certain measures, but as just ad hoc measures. And that's why ESLA was supposed to be, to last just 3 to 5 years, just as the temporary import duties or the national or fiscal stabilization levies that has been implemented from the Rawlings administration all the way to date. It is only this administration that has made those taxes permanent. And that is why we are unable to even go back to them, because the tax burden is high. Personal income, I heard the president talk about 2017 again. No, there was no resolution by any of the assemblies for the carrying tax. And who says that they are not being taxed today? We reduced taxes, but we quickly raised the personal income tax rate. We imposed the additional levies that we're talking about. We even blocked input tax credit on Get Fund and DACF, which was making the production lower, the refund, the VAT refund that they were enjoying. That is an increase, and those are some of the causes of the inflation.
Okay.
So yes, charity begins from home, and I think we should look at the domestic measures, including not just the expenditure-free SHS, but some of the tax measures that we have been implementing, which has constrained our ability to raise the tax to GDP ratio.
Okay. Gentlemen, to wrap the conversation, I'm going to give you about 40 seconds each. But I'll start with a bit of a premise for you to digest as you sum up everything. Mr. President also says, quote, now that we have seen the worst of the COVID-19, I can tell you that there were moments during those times when I was distraught. There were moments when I was in despair about the apparent inadequacy of our health facilities. And there were moments when I wondered if the dire predictions made about dead bodies on our streets would truly happen. He juxtaposes that with what is happening currently in our economy. And by making that comparison, is Mr. President underestimating the battle ahead? He talks about the battle being the Lord's. And is he being overly optimistic, looking at the realities that we face? 40 seconds each. I'll start with you, Dr. Akakpo. And those will be your final words.
Okay. Well, he's the president. And so I expect my president to be optimistic. I don't expect him to sound any other tone but one of optimism. And so juxtaposing that, I suspect that his point was there were all these dire predictions. It didn't happen. We are going through tough economic times. There may be dire predictions, but we will put in measures to stem off all of those dire predictions. And so, but again,
shouldn't that be laced with reality? Realism?
It has to, but again, like I said, I don't expect my president to sound a tone of doom and gloom, right?
Definitely
because
not.
Then where does that leave citizens? So you need him to sound a tone of optimism that says all of this would work out. Now, when he retires with his ministers and other government officials, then they can deal with the hard questions, the tough policy choices. But in dealing with the public, after admitting that we are in a crisis, he has to show a sense of optimism that says we will get through this. Because if he ends up sounding doom and gloom, what does that do to the rest of us? Citizens, those who invest in the market, all of that. It wouldn't be good.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kwapong. Thank you. We're really grateful for your time. Let me come to Dr. Appiah. Your take on that, 40 seconds as well?
Right. I think the assurance that there will be no haircuts is very, very good. However, the president needs to recognize that he is in a negotiation room with a powerful IMF. What is the take of the IMF? If the IMF walks away, what happens to that optimism? Second, the president should take another look at the free SHS because it is a major contributory factor to our problem. Third, the president should not be overly optimistic that the budget is going to pass quickly without problems. If there is a need to change the minister in order to secure a quick deal in parliament, he needs to do it. And finally,
do you think he should do that? Do you think he should do that? Should he change Ken Ofori-Atta now ahead of the budget rather than what his MPs have agreed to do?
If the IMF deal is partly dependent on securing a budget, then he has no option than to change the minister. Otherwise, as he's a Sikampedede, but he's walking into a storm in parliament, he's walking into Dede, that's going to be long and then tough. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those concluding comments, Dr. Appiah. Interesting how he puts it. If some of those things are not done, the president would be walking into Dede noise in Parliament. Seth, you have 40 seconds. Your final words.
Thank you very much. Let me just repeat. Where there was COVID, there was 6 billion, which we should have used to do a collection. Just like banking sector, energy sector debt, there was ESLA. We talk about these things without, the government talking about, the resources that were available to help resolve these issues in the case of ESLA collateralized. I agree with, Dan, we do have an IMF. It's not just IMF with ourselves. We don't have market access. Yes, there is some comfort because government is heavily dependent on the domestic market to finance the budget. Your own business news this morning spoke about auction, shortfalls, and we don't want that. But we need to restructure the debt. So what is the alternative? It's very important. It's not just enough to say we are not doing this. And let me repeat, okay, at the risk of repeating, expenditure. It is expenditure, 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 which is leading to the deficit and the borrowing. And if we do not have a very concrete expenditure reduction plan, I don't think that we are going to be able to conclude by the end, of the year, which, by the way, what are the timelines? Is it to reach staff level agreement by the end of the year? I think we are even far from that because government is going to be preoccupied between now and December in passing its own budget. When is it going to have time to go and negotiate, do a final negotiation for a staff level agreement? We need those timelines to convince ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be disappointed at the end of the year will come and we do not have agreement on the IMF program.
Right. Well, quite an interesting discussion we've had. Mr. Tekpe, we are grateful for your time. Former Minister for Finance and Economic Planning, Seth Tekpe, there sharing his thoughts. We also had Dr. Daniel Appiah, political governance and public administration expert at the University of Ghana Business School. And also joining the conversation, we had Dr. John Osai Kwapong, a CDD fellow. Gentlemen, thank you so much for having joined us on this conversation.
You're welcome.
Great. And so it's a wrap for this end of the conversation, but still to come, we're definitely going to engage you, of course. We'd love to hear from you. I'm looking at some of the comments that have been coming through, and so many things are going through my mind. But you can have your say with the hashtag AMShow. We'll be taking your comments on social media, and we'll activate the phone lines at the end of the show. So don't you forget to stay with us for that. We'll also be engaging Kwesi Che Dakwa on the real state of Ghana currently, the economy, and matters arising. All of that still to come on the AM show. Do stay. We'll be right back. Welcome back on the AM show. And there's a crucial subject we have to discuss because across many parts of the globe, the demand for food is currently at an all-time high. Ensuring that every human being has access to sufficient food at all times requires that the yields of crops are maintained above current levels. Achieving this in the face of climate variability, soil degradation, and the increased incidence of pests and diseases requires the development of improved and better adapted crops. Well, joining us for a discussion on the U.S. Ghana Innovation for Food and Economy workshop, we have Dr. Jerry Mboyene. He's an entomologist and senior research scientist. We also have Dr. Maxwell Dahon Asante, a plant breeder and principal research scientist. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining the conversation.
Thank you.
So we know that in our world currently, I mean, people are even talking about GMOs again. People are talking about genetically modified foods and organisms and all of that because times are hard. And what people will eat, the local fuel, has become difficult. But what started this entire drive, this road you're going down? I'll start with you, Dr. Mboyene.
Yeah, so just like you rightly mentioned, a lot of challenges in food security in Africa and in other countries, including Ghana. Our farmers are not able to produce sufficient food to actually meet the increasing population. Now, the current population of Ghana stands over 34 million people, and the land for cultivation is reducing. So that means that scientists in Ghana have to do a lot to maximize the yield per unit area so that we can continue to feed people, to avoid issues of security challenges, because once people are hungry, anything at all they can do just because of their hunger. So we must be able to feed our population. Food must be affordable and it must be cheap. And that is what the CSIR and scientists are working towards.
That's an interesting point you make. Dr. Dako Asante, so we're dealing with climate change, global warming, drought and floods in different places, from Pakistan to Accra to wherever you want to mention. But at the same time, we have to provide food for people. I remember a few weeks ago, we put out a story about Bambara groundnuts because, up north, some people were not cultivating the normal types. They were not yielding the results they wanted. How does that feed into the conversation we're having?
So that means that scientists must use all the tools in our toolbox to try and solve these challenges you enumerated. And that's where agricultural biotechnology comes in. Because for plant breeders, we usually cross within species. So if I want a high yielding rice variety which is also tasty, I take one which is high yielding and I transfer the genes for good taste into that one. But if I have a disease outbreak and there's no source of resistance within rice, then I've come to a dead end. But agri-biotechnology helps you to go beyond your species. And then you can move a gene from another source. So I'm working on what we call nitrogen insufficient rice. We found the gene in barley. Barley is close to wheat, which uses nitrogen,
hops and all of that used for drinks
very, very, very efficiently. And we have moved it into rice. So you can plant that rice in nitrogen deficient soils and it will still grow. And then you know that the fertilizer prices have gone through the roof.
Right.
So these are ways that scientists can come in, so that the farmer will apply 1/3 of what you usually apply and still get
his or her yield.
And it's also good for climate change, because if you use too much fertilizer, especially in the lowlands, it turns into nitrous oxide and it affects the ozone layer.
I have an interesting question for both of you. So talking about innovating for food growth and the economy and all of that, I'm sure you listened to Mr. President yesterday when he spoke about import substitution, and one of the foremost things that came to mind for me was rice.
Exactly.
We see the example of the Nigerians. They are not there yet, but they form those rice pyramids and they are doing stuff.
Yeah.
Can we get there in terms of import substitution and growing our own rice to feed all of Ghana with some of what you're talking about?
We can. So there are value chain actors, starting with first the breeders who develop varieties and produce the seed. The seed companies must take it up. The extension has to disseminate it. Government must come in with a policy that helps farmers to develop because rice is also about land development.
Right.
When you go to Asia, the land is well leveled, the water is well managed, and then of course, even though we are developing nitrogen use efficient varieties, you cannot grow plants without nutrition. Yeah. So you have to find a way of getting the farmers to be able to get cheap sources of fertilizer and apply. But we have all that it takes to be able to stop rice importation.
We have everything it takes.
We have everything it takes. The varieties
even
are
now.
Yes. Right. The varieties are there. We have thousands of acreages of lowlands. In Tree, we call it Afro.
Which we can turn into paddies and use.
Paddy fields. Yeah. We can turn it around and stop all these things.
For you, Dr. Mboine, what is your take on this, on that same subject, briefly?
Yeah, so sure. Just to add up to what he's saying, you see, importation can actually be stopped. It's all about trying to tackle the little challenges that we have in the production system. So like you talked about using nitrogen efficiently, there are also other technologies available for avoiding issues of pests. You realize that we had issues of fall armyworm in our maize production. Yeah. These are simple tools that biotechnology is able to make use of to produce varieties that are able to overcome damage by some of these important pests. In cowpea, that is beans that we use for our gobe, farmers are not able to produce the kind of yields that
Gobe happens to be crucial to...
Very, very important. It's referred to as the poor man's meat.
It's a lifesaver.
Definitely for most people, because...
Together with Ebony and Katia and...
everything.
Cocoa.
Sure. So you realize that the price of our common gobe is becoming a lot more expensive, and that's just because of the challenges our farmers face when it comes to pests and other things. But then through the power of biotechnology, we've been able to develop a variety that is able to overcome damage by one of the most important pests in the cowpea or in the beans. And once farmers have access to this particular variety, they can grow it and harvest a lot in the course of the season. That will go a long way to even minimize importation from neighboring countries, and will be self-sufficient and even export more to further strengthen our city.
And all of this, it's important you make that point, because through this we can further strengthen our city. If we're importing less, you know, and maybe even producing to the point where we can have a surplus and export, then you know what that could mean for our economy. That's a very valid point you make. But tell me a bit more. I'll start with you about this US Ghana Innovation for Food and Economy workshop. What should we know?
So the US Ghana Economy for Food and Economy workshop was actually held last Wednesday in Tamale. And it was just the main essence of it was to create awareness on biotechnology in the country and its importance as far as national development is concerned. And those are just some of the few issues that we mentioned here. The challenges of pests in our farming system, reduced area of cultivation, reduced yield because of issues of drought and others, that biotechnology comes in handy to actually assist as part of the solutions that our farmers can actually have. So the whole essence of the workshop was to bring the relevant stakeholders from the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Health, and all other government agencies on a common table to talk about these issues of how to secure the country food-wise by exploring the role of biotechnology in ensuring food security in Ghana.
Doc, would you say your aims were met in organizing this workshop?
Yes, there were many stakeholders around. They were educated about biotech and all the issues associated with it. Some of these untruths that go around with biotech crops, like it has a terminator gene, it causes cancer. We addressed all those things. If we have time here, we can mention some.
Are these, just to clarify, are these in any way, you're talking about climate smart rice, you're talking about modified cowpea and all of that. Are these GMOs? Are these genetically modified foods, so to speak?
Yes.
They are?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so clarify for all of us, because I'm sure when some people hear GMO, they get terrified.
Yeah,
clarify for us. What does it mean in essence?
Yes, so let me say this way. As I said from the beginning, if a plant breeder wants to work, okay, he needs a diverse source of strains with different genes. So if I'm working on a trait like fall armyworm, I cannot find a source of resistance in maize, okay? And I find a source of resistance in another organism. Because I'm moving it from another organism, it becomes a transgene. I've transferred the gene from another source into my material, and that makes the material a GMO. Okay. Yeah, that's just what it is. But
so there's nothing unsafe.
There's nothing unsafe about it. There's nothing unsafe about it.
I've even heard people say that, when you consume GMOs, even your DNA would be. I mean, you hear all kinds of things that. I'm just bringing these up for you to enlighten lots of people who could be watching us.
So basically, any food at all that you eat contains a bit of DNA for the organism that the food is coming from.
Right.
And the moment, DNAs are basically proteins. The moment you boil it, or even when you eat it, even if you eat it in the raw form, the moment it gets into your system, there are gastrointestinal fluids that will degrade those proteins. So there is actually nothing like you are eating. No, it's not true.
Okay.
It's not true.
So let me just find out. You are breeders yourselves.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the farmers who, in the end, would have to use these, tools or
or the products.
Let me put them that way. How are they going to have access? What is the plan? How do you reach them with all of this? I mean, at this point, I see you like in some ivory tower with your innovations and all of that. How does it trickle down to the farmer so that we get the results?
We are not in ivory towers at all. We do what we call participatory breeding. We carry the farmers along, even right from the lab and in our stations, so they know what is happening on the ground. So we now have to go through the finance stages for us to get to the farmers, and they know. Jerry's BT cowpea will come to the market in a year, and then our rice will follow. So
I'm sure the cow people.
So the work is done.
Looking,
very excited.
Yeah,
excited, waiting with bated breath.
And the farmers know about it. We carry them along. They have seen it on the field. I'm sure that some of them have stolen some of the seed already.
Oh, I see. Because so how are they going to have access when it's ready? Is it going to be sold to them? What's the mechanism?
So right now, as I talk to you, we are working with over 100 farmers in northern Ghana who have materials that they are evaluating on their farms. We are working in over 15 different communities where we are having demonstrations for them to see how the cowpea is performing. These are all part of processes towards releasing the variety to them, which is normally done by the National Seed Council under the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. Yeah. So once the variety is released by the National Seed Council and it goes out, the Ministry of Agriculture now moves ahead to give us we now produce the breeder and foundation seed. Then seed companies in the country, they pick it up, multiply, and then get it distributed to farmers.
Okay, so I know there was a time when we were talking about a shortage of soybean and all of that. I know cowpea is also used in feed, right? It also has its benefits. So to wrap the conversation, what would you say are the takeaways from this workshop, the crucial takeaways for both of you, and what is the next step? What do we do going forward?
So if I may start, what I'll say is that we've gotten to a point in our national development that biotechnology has to play a very key role as far as food security in Ghana is concerned. We have used it extensively in the medical sciences to produce insulin for our diabetics and all that. And we are now at a point that for our food security needs, we have to embrace it as a country. This is because of the way our population is increasing, the decline in our area of production, and even the poor state of most of our soils. Most of the solutions to the challenges we are facing in food security can actually be tackled when we employ tools in biotechnology.
For you?
So your scientists are working hard. Biotechnology is safe. We are using it, and through it, we can become food secure if all the other things work.
Final words, Dr. Darko Asante.
Yeah, so we'll thank you, and then we'll say that, as I said, biotechnology crops are safe. And we can use it to achieve food security.
Dr. Mboyne?
We've consumed biotech crops for nearly 30 years now, and there's been no incidents of someone falling sick because of that. The safety of it is highly assured, so people should brace up for it, and then that's a sure way to secure the country food-wise.
And I think on behalf of all Ghanaians, we would also say kudos to the CSIR for bringing us to this point, because food security is one of those major challenges, or food insecurity is one of those major challenges that we're facing now and which we will face in the near future with all the global dynamics that we have to contend with. But we're grateful that you took the time to join us this morning. Dr. Jerry Mboyne is an entomologist and senior research scientist with the CSIR. We also have Dr. Maxwell Darko Asante, a plant breeder and principal research scientist. They joined us for this discussion on that US-Ghana Innovation for Food and Economy workshop. On Citizen's Microphone, we get reactions from Kumasi on the president's address last night. Emmanuel Bright Kweku joins us from Tech Junction. Emmanuel, if you can hear me, what is the latest? What are people telling you from Tech Junction? What are their thoughts on what Mr. President said?
They make of the president's address yesterday regarding the economy. I have by me a gentleman. He is called Raphael Arthur, and he's also a citizen, a resident over here in the region. First of all, I know yesterday the president made some concerns regarding our economy. He even admitted that we are currently in a crisis. So I want to find out from you, Raphael, what do you make of what the president said? Already some people are calling the speech empty. Some renowned journalists, actually, they are saying that the president's speech, the city itself is weightier than the president's speech. What do you make of, did it meet your expectation, actually?
To be very honest, no, it didn't. Why would I say so? So, what we're expecting from Nanado's speech was a speech of reassurance. Ghanaians were expecting him to give us a speech that would make us feel happier. Russia-Ukraine war, COVID, these are conversations we've heard everywhere. We hear it every single day happening. Now the question is, what are we supposed to see? You still get us hearing blames of we are not paying taxes. Then the question is, what happened to e-levy? You hear him telling us about inflation rates. What exactly are the kind of differences we're expecting to see? We didn't get any of that from the speech yesterday. For me, I felt like it was a below-par speech for the president, and it's not something we were supposed to see. Why would I say such a thing? Notice fully well that after the speech, it didn't calm anybody down. People are angry this morning. When I even entered the Trotsky to Tech Junction, everybody in the car was angry. The only big thing you hear is Sikam Pedede. So what do you get from the Sikam Pedede? Is it that we are the ones making the noise, or the money is the one making the noise? We think we need more clarity, because most of the things are like, they are just there. We are not getting the kind of impact we'd have it to have. So we think you should have a different view for what he's going to say, because if this is what we're expecting to see, then I don't think it's making any difference. People are still angry. Clearly, you can even see all the drivers and everybody around are still fuming around. So I don't think the speech was one that actually made any difference for me.
So what's actually your expectation? What were you expecting? Some people were expecting him to accept, be remorseful and accept that he did not manage the economy as he promised us. In fact, when he was coming to government, he said 18 months he's going to transform Ghana. But clearly, 6 months down the line, we've not seen anything. What were you expecting?
Yeah, so my expectations was a certain level of responsibility. And I think most of the governments are taking responsibility. In UK, for example, the Prime Minister, who even got sacked after 40 days plus in power, says that she knew that they didn't manage it well. So what did we expect? We were expecting him to say, oh, we did this wrong. Okay, we assumed that when we implemented e-levy, we'll get a certain amount of money. Or we assumed that when we implemented this or cut down this, we'll get that. But nothing of that sort happened. We still got blame for Putin, who was in Russia, and also we got blame. And it's not that we are saying it is wrong. It's just that, what is it supposed to change? So we hear different forms of changes will happen, that is going to cut down expenditure by 30%. That's with regards to those in government and all those things. And okay, yeah, the question is, where will all those monies go to? How are we sure that these things are going to have a certain level of change? Because for me, where I lost trust in government essentially was earlier this year with e-levy. We expected a certain level of change to happen within the country when he said, oh, when we implement e-levy, everything will change. And I think I totally disagree with Mr. President when he says that we are not paying taxes. For God's sake, now, people aggressively still use mobile money. Where are all these monies going to? So the thing is, that whole change to be, like, that speech that we're expecting from him to change the aura, give us assurance, change the environment, nothing. Trending on Twitter, nobody is happy. Even people who are part of the party didn't get that. But one important sad part of the speech which just came to mind was the fact that nothing about the finance minister was spoken about. And that itself is wrong. Because imagine the majority caucus in parliament saying they want finance minister out, and we didn't get anything of that sort. I think it's something the president has to address, because it's an issue that has to be sorted out.
Okay, so that was Raphael Atta telling us more about what he makes of the speech, the address the president gave yesterday regarding the economies. He outlined many assurances. He even said that fuel, particularly, he and his government is trying to engage with some international market traders, oil market traders, and find alternatively affordable fuel for taxi or drivers particularly. I have this particular driver here with me. Eja Machu.
Papa.
Ejana oba ejumum to say. And President Emma address earlier now chairman say unfortunately went meeting, but assembly can particularly they say a driver for munamu use fuel, motor fuel and yada. You share your fuel pumps are a walk abontina a bit boyarding. President say on international markets ni bi more muton fuel yi edin commercial say betmenya fuel e wo for ma who say.
Oh, if we saw to me and Sabe Boagana, if you say, your fuel market all can once MCC last time. In the next 3 days, going up there with Cocoto for you should diesel car. We talk for 18.99 pesos in Ghana as a per liter. Now, if you say the consumer of it, no, maybe I'm one more here to Prime Union Station. We load free here, Quas or Mampon. Now, we load pay from her to Mampon. I'm a cover 1 liter, and so we load where my load is taking me 14 cities. Chidama wants to make loss. Last week, Saturday, me had my pump around 3:30. Now, new time I was my pump, but my numbers are 4 and I am consumed a day. No, now, Borosa, my food on the side, but me just coming here and so, Mammy a day, a pokofi. Tis a bit my filling station should be on us, bit mama prizes in a from Kakrana, Yensu, Hoba Harry, and Kafise, Kababo, and Semaya, the Ama name of power.
Okay, so that was a taxi driver explaining to us. He says he has been going to the fuel pump and the prices over there is quite exorbitant. So he thinks that the president, speaking with these international fuel market operators, he thinks that if we are going to get an affordable fuel, then hopefully it should reduce the cost of fuel at the pump. So he thinks that what the president has outlined is a step in the right direction. So finally, me finding out, yenim say ya come market. Sisi a enyoma bo fuel ne control enyoma bo. Ohwe enyoma bo e wo market so a ebo ne yedin. Ye attribute president na aka say market for no omususu and reduce so many no who saying.
Oh yeah, reduce better my finally in the last week.
Okay, na Jaudin here.
Made Kojo Elias.
So that was Kojo Elias speaking to us earlier on. We'll try and engage some of the drivers over here and see if we can speak to them and find out what they think of the president's address generally, how they see. I can see some people over there. Let's try and engage with them. Okay. Good morning.
So Emmanuel Bright Kweku took us to the tech junction in Kumasi, but should I do some Eminem for you? Guess who's back? Back again. Yes, he's back. The king is back. Kwesi Che Dakwa. He's back in the studio with more fireworks. Off air, we're talking about a few things, and he was already, firing at me, and I told him to pause. Don't fire at me. Fire for the audience that is waiting for you. But KKD is back in the studio.
I was firing at you because you are part of the Fourth Estate.
Right.
And whether you like it or not, the Fourth Estate is part of every nation's government. There's the presidency, there is the judiciary, then there are the parliamentarians, who are the legislature, and then there is the media. So if the media does not hold these three to account, people get away with murder.
The unofficial fourth realm.
Unofficial? You are official.
Well, I'll put it that way because it was grafted, even if you want to talk about horticulture, into our system. Because like we know it, the Baron de Montesquieu and the rest will tell us about the checks and balances of the three organs of government. Yes. But I agree with you,
are the checks
have that crucial role. But I'll put a question to you. The media.
Before the question.
We're only as strong.
Let us observe culture and tradition.
Sure.
When you go to somebody's home, they give you water. But whether or not they give you water, you give them a little something. So here is a little something I brought for you to wet your whistle.
Thank you. So giving me some very delicate...
And here, more importantly, is a symbol from our culture. Which
another Idinkra symbol.
Which says, Akukonai tiaba na enkumba. Akokonai tiaba na enkumba. So the feet of the hen, with the claws on it, it may step on a child,
or the chick, but it will not crush it.
I want to use the child because of the literal translation. It may step on its child, but it does not kill it. So when you have your people, be they your father, your mother, your sister, your brother, or even your child, if they step on you with the feet of the hen, they may correct you, but they won't kill you. And if you will listen to correction, you will not fail.
Thank you so much. Mo. Near Jumayo. That's a moe, by the way. Thank you so much. Thanks for doing me the honors. I'll just, yes, I know. I wanted to put it so that it will be visible, at least somehow, as the show goes on. Since you started on a proverbial note, I like your gray, by the way. You've not left it like this.
The thing is, I don't like growing hair in my face. But my sweetheart looked at me one early morning with the with a scruffy face. I like to call it scruffy face. and she says, I think I like it. And I said, but you said it makes you itch in the face when I touch you at night. And she says, let's keep it for 4 days and see what happens. So this is the 4th day.
Well, congratulations. Thank you for joining the gang.
Thank you.
Especially when, we heard recently from a member of parliament saying that there are a lot of coconut heads with beards who don't. You know what I'm talking about.
Was that a pineapple head who said it? Or was that a melon head?
Anyway, so let's get into it. Since you started on a proverbial note, this may not technically be a proverb, but yesterday, I want us to start from the president's address on the economy. He said, "Sikam pedede."
Yep.
L'argent n'aime pas le bruit.
You speak French very well.
Yes. He even went into the French.
All of culture is embedded in language. And when he said it, I felt heartbroken. Because that was a statement to the populace who were speculating about where we are going and how the city is performing badly. He thinks if you talk down the money, then the money will go down. No, that's not true.
It isn't?
No, if you talk down Joy FM will not come crumbling down so long as they have a success criteria and are working assiduously to ensure that the success criteria is in place. As a French scholar too, I think the better one he could have used was what is actually about his governance, which is l'argent n'y a pas d'odeur. Sika ni pampain. Because if you look at the fact that in Kufuor's regime, in Kufuor's administration, a man who was known to be corrupt eventually was appointed by Nanado to become the head of the Public Procurement Authority, then it tells you that he has no problem with money, no matter the smell of it. L'argent n'y a pas d'odeur. Sika ni pampain. Edagotemu, if you come for ho, if you nipa papa ho, and fun ho. And have you heard this nonsense about the president's daughter being given a contract to paint the bridges? I can list the 12 top artists in Ghana today because I have bought from at least 10 of them since I was 18 years old when I started collecting paintings. Sam Bentel is one of them. Atu Delaki is one of them.
These are names I recognize.
Kudo is one of them. My brother Nick Kowalski is one of them. Larry Otu is one of them. If we have a painting contract, how does it go to a member of my family because I'm the president?
But have you run your checks to find out why she got the contract?
You see, I'm literate.
That is assuming she actually got the contract?
I am a trained journalist. I'll tell you something. You see, common sense will tell you that sometimes you don't do something just because of the optics. So the optics is such that when you hear that somebody who you have appointed, like the PPA was doing, is giving contracts to themselves or somebody in their family, you will have no moral authority to challenge them. Now, Mahama built an airport, I'm told. Go and find out. And I'm not going to accuse anybody, but go and find out. Who is in charge of the duty-free shops over there?
You're talking of Terminal 3.
So who is in charge of the duty-free shops over there? Are they also linked to the presidency? Are we running a government of selfishness and greed and then telling the poor people who are struggling that Sikam pedede? When a young man has died because of 2 cedis, a fare had been raised from 5 cedis 50 pesos to 7
I know the incident you're referring to.
Whatever pesos.
Right.
And he was fighting over this and he's been killed. Look, Sika emperof. That's what we say. But More na mama dede abanti na monsanka sesika mpedede.
As in government.
Because you are giving yourselves all the contracts. Everybody is suffering. You are the one who was flying in a plane which you, with your own money, which you say you had before you became president, would never rent. And now we are suffering. Who says sesika mpedede? Listening to that speech yesterday, which was a total failure, because as a professional speechwriter, as a man trained as a journalist in mass media, brands and culture practice, I can tell you, a speech must have some conviction, it must have some passion, the inflection must be brilliant, and at the end of it, it must call people to action. What was the call to action? You are begging.
Mr. President was exactly. He was telling traders, look, I beg of you, don't hike prices and all of that.
You are not telling. You are begging them. You see, if you have good rules, you don't beg the one who sweeps the gutter to sweep his gutter. If you have good rules, when you are an auditor and you go into any environment, you can tell that the control environment is bad, it's murky, and you fix it. And there was an elephant in the room. Our big problems in Ghana today are threefold. Number one is the economy. Number two is drinking water. And number three is nepotism. The economy, drinking water, nepotism. Go and see the Minister for Roads. Is that the most important thing? Selfish people in government and nobody wants to talk about it. Are they? You will die too. Tread softly, speak gently. But if you have to raise your voice against injustice. Raise your voice against wickedness. Raise your voice against people who preach one thing and do another. And I do 11, what's your name?
You speak of selfishness. The president talks about 30% of his office holders, having their salaries cut. That is going to be rolled on, is going to be continued, and all of that.
Here, let me help them. Let me help the president here because he's a man I have loved for 35 years. Now, another thing, I went to my father, who is 84 years old. He wasn't well, so I went and spent a week with him, sitting down, conversing, even recording some of our conversations and just laughing. And my father had ordered that somebody brings him 50 young coconut trees. And I said, what for? He says, Kwesi, I'm planting them. And I said, Dad, it is my job to do that. And I says, no, Kwesi, I am planting trees. They will grow. I may not enjoy the shade or the fruit, but that is what we old men must do. So tell your old men in government, they must be planting trees for the children. These are the words of my father. Openin Kwesi Dakwa of Clan Ediana of Adansi Dompoase. He says, tell your old men in government that they should be planting trees, the shade of which they know they will not sit in, the fruits of which they know they will not enjoy, but not plucking the fruits for themselves and their wives and their children and their wives' children. It's wrong. Let me tell the president what he needs to do. That 30%, let them keep it. Because if they stop the corruption, they will need that 30%. Rather, sack every deputy minister tomorrow morning. We have too many of them. Reduce your 120 ministers immediately to 40 ministers. You see Cote d'Ivoire? Ouattara realized the way the winds are blowing, the winds of change are coming. So he, without anybody asking, is already reducing the number of his ministers. And he already has less than 60 ministers. And he wants to bring them to less than 40. He's working on it. You have 120 who have failed us miserably. And you are telling us that's because 4 years...
Recently, he was telling us about how good his ministers had been. He even put out 5 excellent ones. Are you disputing that?
If nobody remembers anything I say today because I may die tomorrow morning, you know why? I have learned that this world is not our own. We're all just passing through. And every day we must live as if it were the last day of our lives.
Some good old Jim Reeves for us.
If nobody remembers anything I say today, please remember this. Yesterday, I listened to our president for about half an hour. And I learned for sure he's in office, but not in power.
How exactly do you mean?
In office.
Let me just repeat what he said. So yesterday he says he listened to Mr. President
for about half an hour.
For about half an hour.
And I learned he's in office.
He's in office.
Not in power.
He says the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, is in office, but not in power. Please explain. Expatiate.
What is Parliament? What does Parliament do?
It makes laws.
Thank you. If the people who make laws and the ones on your team, so this is what Bayern Munich versus what? Barcelona? And the ones on your team are saying, no, you're failing us. But we can tell you directly you're failing us, so we're going to put the blame on your finance minister for now. Eventually, we will get to you. Are you really in power? If you give a speech of 30 minutes, and instead of telling us how ashamed you are, that you let some of the people you appointed, you let some of the people who you put around you who had no common sense to tell you, Emperor, you have no clothes, but made you sign or have somebody you have authorized sign to go and rent a plane your nation cannot afford, and they come and give us the stupid justification of, oh, but that way he can have a shower in the sky. And you, knowing full well that we don't have the horses if we create the generals, have made 16 regions when we need only 6 based on the ethnic groups of Ghana. Cannot even think of having hospitals so people do not die needlessly, but are thinking of a cathedral, not knowing and understanding the church is in your heart, not in buildings. And that buildings may be built with money from corruption, but hearts that are selfless and that have kindness will not be corrupted. How are you in power? You are in office. You're not in power.
The parliamentarians, and I know you were referencing the 80 plus members of parliament from the majority side.
Some of
interestingly.
Some of whom also did not sign.
Yes, well, some of whom did not sign.
And some of whom are also claiming that they were bribed when they went to speak to the president. And you know this?
That has been parried by the majority side.
That once somebody in a position of authority says anything, even it is a brain fart, like those words of the minister for roads when he says you're going to convert the toll booths into toilet facilities. And I was wondering, are people going to fly with drones and drop into the toilets whilst the cars are passing by at full speed? Even if it is a brain fart, when people in authority speak, listen attentively and look for the rhyme and the reason.
Now, going back to those members of parliament, I mean, it's a novelty in our Fourth Republic to see that happen because of the nature of our politics.
It did not happen because they are kind, not because they are brilliant. It happened because their constituents told them you are going out of office.
But they could have decided not to go down that road. I just want to find out, is it time for Ken Ofori-Atta to go?
I saw somebody who had used the brand of KFC. I don't know why about 22 people sent it to me, but I don't open everything that comes to me because some people send me information that makes them think, oh, this country is going to the dogs. Some of the information I choose not to use because I have not had my researchers verified yet. And some of the information I choose not to use because I cannot verify them internationally. And I have to check with other journalists from around the world because some journalists outside Ghana, unfortunately, have more information on the corruption in your country than you who live here, because you are blinded by the nonsense and the niceties. If you would go out there and find how many of your own people are stealing this country blind, who are actually in positions of authority, it would be cause for suicide. But if you think of it seriously, those MPs who stood up to speak have acted with courage. Courage which they got from their constituents. Because don't forget this, because of the way our government is set up, nearly every MP whose government is in power is angling for a ministerial position. So they try as much as possible not to offend the president. But I think they have gotten to a point where they think, if this president even gives me an appointment, I don't want it. Ken must go. Ken must go because there has been too much thievery under him. Thievery which we simply want to call, oh, it's unethical. But I'm telling you, if you're living at home where 2 children have sickle cell, one of the children has a spinal injury, and you have an uncle in the home who says, things have gotten so bad, we need to go borrow money to go get surgery for these children, right? And that uncle then goes to see somebody from whom he can borrow money. All you need is $100 million. And the person from whom he's borrowing money will also ensure that he makes $9.8 million Ghanaians, will you trust that uncle? That uncle is Ken Oforiatta. We go when you must. We go a janum. We papa be bobra pa a yebi. We go any masi. We go a chim for any masi maybe I can't dance. If it's a dance for ya see, and a chim, and you quip him, and enzima. We go when you must. When you briadie. And I want every Ghanaian to go and read about Bernie Madoff. You see, when you see money managers have more questions, plenty. And I know some stupid person will go and stand on television and defend them because they have spat mucus into his mouth and treat him like a dog. And eventually, what is happening at the airport will also come out. When you think of it really, why? How much money do you alone want to have? Why? Data Bank alone, how many of your staff are in government at the moment? How much money does Nanado owe you? In fact, Parliament must ask this question.
Do you think it's a matter of how much the president...
I think
how the president is beholden to him?
I think, you see, the thing about thinking is that anybody who thinks is likely to cause offense. Because every time you think, people who are disingenuous will be offended. And every time you think, and especially ask questions, people who are doing wrong will feel uncomfortable. I think the president owes him. Because if the president doesn't owe him, what is it that is so beholden to this gentleman that with what he has done with our economy, he still has to be at post? It goes for every minister, not only him. Those who have done well, keep them at post. If the president says he wants to fire the Greater Accra Regional Minister, I'll be one of those who will go pleading on his behalf because I think he has done a sterling job for our motherland, Ghana. In fact, with a minister like that, you don't even need a mayor in Accra and Tema because he is doing their jobs. But some too have failed us. And I'm saying, go to Bernie Madoff, one of the so-called most successful money managers in the world. Do you know how he ended? At 70 years, he went to jail. At 80 years, he died. But when he was going to jail at the age of 70, he was given an imprisonment of 150 years. Some people call it, bad money management. Some people call it corruption. No, it is Ewi. He's a thief. Thief. Call people thieves. Don't say corrupt. Corrupt is, sexifying it. You are a thief. You lead us to go and borrow more money than any government has borrowed in the last 50 years, only for us to find out that the very two people that the president has appointed, one as Minister of Finance and another as Minister of Finance at the presidency. What nonsense.
And I was about to come to that.
What is that?
Because the MPs also roped him into the conversation. Are you calling both of these people thieves?
Are you aware that my rant of 17th August has led to Parliament asking for this to be the first thing that is discussed? I am only a citizen. My power is in my household. I am the president of the Che Dakwa household. That does not mean when you are president of Ghana, I relinquish my common sense. Free SHS is a good idea. I think it's a stupid idea for we who can afford to pay. Because you see, it is similar to Kwesi Kwarteng's thing that he did in England. Instead of giving the poor some alleviation, he'd rather cut taxes all across so he can still please his banker bosses. See, you need to understand this, Ghanaians. Learn and understand that most of the people in politics are funded by people with some money. And like I told you, l'argent n'est pas d'odeur. Sikane ni pampine. And they don't care if the person who is funding them is an axe murderer, is a drug dealer, is a thief, is somebody who puts more money on top of the contracts. Those people will be rewarded. What happened with LaBianca? She's still there. She's on the Council of State. Who cares? She's a good woman. I know her personally. Fine woman. She's a businesswoman. Wherever there's a loophole, she will take it. But you see, I spoke with a criminal investigator in England who told me this. King, I want you to share this with your people in Ghana because I have seen some of your things on social media. I said, how? He said, you won't believe it. But it was sent to me by a Nigerian and a South African. And I said, which one?
Interesting.
He says, which one? He says, the one about loyalty. I've seen others, but I think everyone for which you have spoken in your local language get somebody to do the translation and share it as well, because you're speaking wisdom not only for your country, but for the world. This criminal investigator told me that people who are selfish and greedy often have some veins of criminality, and no matter where you put them, they will look for loopholes, whether in the window, the door, the ceiling, in the law or contracts. People who are criminally minded will find loopholes and use them. So it is up to the people who are in government.
It's like that saying, opportunity makes the thief.
The thieves will find the opportunity by any means necessary. So it is then up to the people in government to follow the thieves. In fact, at a certain point in time, employ the thieves as they did with Abernali. Catch Me If You Can. That's another movie I want everybody to go and see. To work for the investigations departments of the United States to show them that this is how criminals think and this is what they do. One of the things criminals do is they give free money. They act as though they were, what's the word? You're a logophile like me. The word, they give free money all the time. Philanthropists.
Oh, right.
So in their philanthropy, you do not question how they make their money. So they will give money to your children, right? And after they have given money to your children, you will thank them and you will send your children to carry food to their home. Do you know what happens to your children when they go there? Whether they are used for rituals or they are used for some sort of slavery, you never know. So whenever somebody is giving for free, take it if you're in need, but always question the one that gives that you don't understand. And that is why in England, when you give people stuff for free, they go like, why are you doing this for me? Why?
So let me ask you, you say that the president's failure is not being put on him, but the MPs are putting it on his finance ministers.
For now. Because
they can't put it on him.
At the end of the day.
You also say that there is corruption in the system and that these people are thieves. So how then would you categorize the president? Who is he?
Then he is an overseer of thievery. Because, really, if this contract about the $25 million, and I don't understand why in more than 48 hours, people that are employed under the presidency have not stepped up to say, this is not true. The lady is a best-selling fine artist, and she won the contract fairly. And these are the people who bid for that contract. And then we can compare that great fine artist to Sam Benton.
But you know that can also be arranged, like we've seen.
No, we shouldn't be arranging stuff. You see, we have tolerated.
No, I'm saying that we can have a whole, a bid and put all those people there, but we already know who is going to win.
But you like your voice, so I've told you, you like your voice. Ben, you like your voice. I'm saying, let us stop the stupidity of those arrangements and let everybody bid. Look, let me tell you what. Look. The president's daughter, the minister's daughter, the pastor's daughter, whoever, everybody. I'm not saying give them same outcomes, but give them same opportunities. As for outcomes I can't be sure, but give them same opportunities. There are people who may have gone to school with the daughter of the greatest minister in this country, but the daughter may have been a dumbass. There are more brilliant people than that daughter. You cannot say because you're in a position of authority, you would take what is for the state and just give it to your child. It is wrong. And if the president hasn't had anybody speak on it up till now, then I can tell you something. As a trained communicator as well, and a trained brand architect as well, as a trained cultural practitioner, that when there is a rumor that is egregious to the position of people in authority and thus to the nation, you address it immediately. That is not to say you get up and address every rumor, but especially when it is about the first family, you squash it. And you see, you must be like one of the wives of the king. You must be beyond reproach. Beyond reproach. You must do things in a manner as to be beyond reproach. Look, after listening to this, right? I'm on a conference call with 7 different people. And you know what one is saying? KKD, You had a conversation with us 12 months ago, and you said we should ban all unnecessary or, not so vital imports. 12 months ago. The president has said it now, and he's not even saying it as a matter of urgency. Is it because big business have lobbied him? Because it's like we still are going to run the same thing for another 6 months before we act. Look, every one of you must start seeing yourself as the president. Every one of you. Because every one of you is educated, and every one of you has been brought up with some modicum of intelligence and some modicum of dignity. Think as though you were the president. And ask yourself, I sat with 3 young men in Kumasi just 3 weeks ago, and I told them, whoever is the president must do these 3 things immediately. One of them is called Nana Kwame Duval. One of them works for a company that fixes windows. And one of them is called Kwame Kwache. If you ask these 3 men, find them, they'll tell you the 3 things I said. One of them is to stop the importation of the not so needed products. You've had
What
6 years already.
What for you are the not so needed products that you speak
Why
of?
are you importing fruit juice? Why Jimmy? Why are you importing fruit juice? Wherever
South Africa, and all the other places.
I don't care.
Right.
Because of that, I told all my staff, I said, do me a favor. It's me you're doing a favor. And I told them this during the COVID. Before we went home, I said, do me a favor. Don't buy any box fruit juice any longer. When I go to Movenpick or any hotel in Ghana, I tell them specifically, are you squeezing your juice here? If they're not, I don't buy it.
And the interesting thing, on the back of the prices, it's now selling at around 35 cedis.
Your dear friends, Samuel Atamensa is your big brother, yeah? They started this thing on rice. Great idea. Why are we still importing rice? And someone say, oh, if you don't import rice, we will starve. My brother, we will find ways of eating other things. You see, it is as though big business also has power over the people who make policy. It's just like the tobacco industry in America.
But it's lobbying. It happens in the U.S.
The gun law. Yes, but just because it happens in the U.S. must not happen here. Let us choose the wisdom of the U.S. and let us shun the stupidity of the U.S. To assume that the U.S. gets everything right means we are nincompoops. The UK doesn't get everything right either. The UK realized we got somebody in power. We just wanted color. We wanted optics. So we got a black person in power, of course, even from Ghana. On a CEO platform where I am, I stated categorically that whilst I wish him well because he's melanated, it saddens me to say he's ultra-conservative and his policies will fail the UK because he thinks the poor must be shunned and the rich must be protected. And exactly in his first policy, that's what he did.
So you saw his
your politics,
political demise coming,
and which is
it was written on the wall.
Which is why I hate to say it, but those who are die-hard party aficionados are next to imbeciles, because you see, if your thinking does not start first with is it true, is it false, is it right, is it wrong, right? Is it wise, is it foolish? But your first consideration is it MPP or NDC? You are next to an imbecile.
How then do you react
who do you need to tell you this?
Those MPs who came out forcefully and said, sack these 2, and they pandered to what Mr. President supposedly told them? Let's forget about any bribery like you've alleged or suggested.
The president is a nice man.
Let's talk about...
No, but let me come to that. The president is a nice man. Everything aside, he is a nice man. There are those who accuse him of elitism and all that. I have never seen elitism in him. And whenever I've said that, people have said, but Kwesi, what do you also class into? Be able to treat you ye. By any class in the home fire in Yashi, I said, no. He's a genuinely nice person. So if you really sit with him and he pleads with you for something, you say, no, they must go today. He says, look, I do understand your concerns, but this is what I want, and I want you to help me, give me another 3 weeks. There's a great likelihood that most people will kowtow to that. That does not mean they were right in doing so. Because if they
So the MPs were wrong,
I think they were wrong.
Pandering to
Every
the wishes
single one
of
of them, including my own dear brother Eugene. Eugene and I go a long way back. Handsome guy, brilliant guy. He has the ability to be president of this country one day. Smart guy. But he is loyal to his party. But I dare say, I think Eugene, like Chambers in his time, was more loyal to the country than to party. And we need more people like that. I can give you another example. Dr. Victor Bampo, who works with the United Nations, more loyal to his country than to party. We need more people like that. In fact, Even Japan, for all the criticisms you may make of him, is more loyal to his country than to party. So anybody who places party before country, please, when you are going to vote, muntiemi, mo koto aba, obia odone party, esen ne mind, Mr. Momuntunti na munyino, na Ghana ye doso. Enyansafo no noso mpo a, enyansafo no ye beye 10% pe. Mo pam wo mu a, obi betumi abeye adwuma no. Don't keep people whose loyalty is to party and to their belly and to their family and to their friends. Look, Atta Mills died. May his soul rest in peace. May be the most honest president we have ever had. Did Ghana stop? Chambers left. Did Ghana stop? Who is the most brilliant MP you have ever seen? They all left. Did Ghana stop? Why is it that when you see something is wrong, somebody is running a ministry which is supposed to be looking after our economic affairs, and we are failing, and you say you cannot let them go? What is it you are covering? Now the question is, what is it that you are covering that you guys need time to cover properly before somebody takes over? Questions. Questions. Give us answers.
Let me ask you something before I pose my next question. If, and I don't assume this would happen, but if the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, said today that I'm resigning, I'm no longer going to be president, I feel maybe my being here is not working for you, so get someone else. Of course, constitutionally, we know the vice president would have to step in for him.
Then we'll be in more trouble.
Would be in more trouble?
Yeah, because isn't he the head of the economic management team unless he has been sidelined?
Are you feeding into the discourse where some people say he has been sidelined?
See, I am a thought leader. I don't feed into other people's discourse. Those who have known me from class 1 till now, when I used to come first in class, and when I stopped going to class so I could be playing my music, no. KKD has never been a...
So let me put it to you. Has the vice president been sidelined as the head of the economic management team?
Possibly. And if he hasn't spoken, then he's not a leader. If you are a leader and you have been sidelined, you don't go to your people and speak to them in your language when other people are there who do not understand your language, and talk to them about how these people don't have respect us, they always want us to be vice president, and that you should make sure that you vote for me. You speak to the nation because you are a leader in the nation. And you see, I put something on my Instagram and my TikTok and my Facebook. I addressed traditional leaders, political leaders, traditional leaders, political leaders, leaders, and those who actually lead. Just because you're a traditional leader or a political leader does not mean you actually lead. Some people actually lead. Some people are whisperers. They whisper into the ears of the people who are seated on the throne. But unfortunately, if you put a clown on the throne, the whole space where the throne is becomes a circus. And right now, we have somebody who is in office, but not in power. I don't want him to resign, but if things get so bad that he sees that the team he has surrounded himself with cannot help him succeed, you hired him. Fire them, unless you want to tell the whole of Ghana that the NPP is so bad, everybody in the NPP is so aimless and daft that there is nobody else to replace these failing people who are running our economy.
Quick question. You say the president is in office but not in power. Who then is in power?
Oh, let's look for who are the whisperers. Let's look for the people who are benefiting in the malgovernance of this country.
Who are they?
Find them. That's your job.
You suggested
I told you.
It said that if a blind man says he will stone you, his foot must be on something.
I have too much stuff that my researchers need to verify. Plenty. But look at those who are thriving. Are you aware that when Kwesi Kwarteng made that announcement, some money managers in England made money? Are you aware? When that pound fell, those people made money. Were those his horse whisperers? So who are our horse whisperers? Is Oforiatta one of them? Is Edubuahin one of them? These are average people in great authority.
Which Edubuahin, the finance minister?
The one at the presidency.
Right.
Average people in great authority who are benefiting from the woes of 31 million people, one of whom was so distressed, he climbed up a mast and committed suicide.
You're talking of the Kaswa incident. My final bit to you as we wrap. We have less than a minute. The president said yesterday, I have total confidence in our ability to work our way out of our current difficulties. We are not afraid of hard work. We will triumph as we have triumphed many times before. Do you not agree with Mr. President? If so, why?
I disagree with the president. You are afraid of hard work. Because if you're not afraid of hard work, the people you put in positions of authority, you will search through all of the nation and pick them. Because anybody who is a manager of a team that does not look at the strengths of every member of his team and put the best foot forward is himself afraid of hard work. And don't say, we are confident, we are this, we are that, because I tell you, I don't speak for millions. I speak for only 20,000 Ghanaians. We don't have confidence in you. I'm sorry.
You don't have confidence in
I don't have the confidence in the president and this government. I don't. I am in a hurry for the next president to take over. Whether it is Bridget Jogbenuku, whether it is Kanufuriata, whether it is John Mahama, the return of the Mahama, whether it is...
what makes you think that person will be any better?
No, what makes me think anyone will be any better? Let me give you the simple example. You live in a village where the chief has slaughtered 3 babies for ritual murder. So that chief has been asked to walk because he's a royal. His royal sandals have been taken off his feet and he's supposed to walk across the river and never come back again because we don't slaughter royals. That chief is going. Are you saying we should not install another chief because of all the people in the village? Nobody can be better than the one who slaughtered 3 children? That's the question to Ghanaians.
KKD. Yeah, that's the brave.
Nasinio.
Thank you for coming.
Love you, brother.
Thank you
thank you for all the hard work you're doing. And let me tell you something. After our conversation, you found your mojo. You found your courage. And I looked at you and I said, at last, I am deeply proud of my brother. Speak truth to power, but not just to power. Speak truth to everyone. Because some of the commoners are worse than some of the people in power. Some of the traders have hiked up their prices so much that if those traders were in power, they will give the airport duty-free section plus the painting of the bridges plus NADBO plus so many other agencies which should be under other ministries to themselves.
Unfortunately, time is not on our hand, but on our side, I should say. But I just want to leave you with this, which is what KKD gave me today, together with the other drink that I'll not put on air.
Last thing.
30 seconds. No more.
It is easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. Ghana for Yafama Kwakwa. And so still, mother. Wake up, take the pillow from your head, and put some common sense and books in it.
Kwesi Chedakwa joined me right here. I told you it was going to be a fiery Monday. Anyway, as we go, hello Ghana. Happy moment is here. Let's storm World Cup Qatar 2022 with Storm Energy Drink, Puma soft drinks, and Awake Drinking Water from Casa Preco Company Limited. Simply buy your favorite Storm Energy Drink, Puma soft drinks, and Awake Drinking Water. Text the 4-digit unique number on the neck of the bottle to short code *780#. Choose option 2, follow the prompts on all networks for free. You could be one of the lucky winners to this year's World Cup in the monthly draw. You could also win TVs, fridges, microwave ovens, mobile phones, home theaters, free drinks, and more instantly. So why are you wasting time? Don't waste any time. Grab a bottle of Storm Energy Drink, Puma soft drinks, and Awake Drinking Water, and let's storm Qatar this World Cup. This promotion is on the NLA Caritas platform, and this advert is FDA approved. Oh, do remember, terms and conditions apply. And that's how we wrap it up this morning. KKD is still in the studio looking at me as QB like, Charlie, what happened? I have something to tell you after this. Thank you so much for joining us this Monday morning. JoyNews Desk is up next. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. It's been a pleasure. Have a good day.